In the teaching building corridor of the School of Computer Science, Su Wanwan, the department beauty of the Foreign Languages Department, publicly confessed her love for an obscure boy majoring in computer science. The class-over bell rang, and the corridor swarmed with students. Su Wanwan stood right in the middle of it. Dressed in a light pink camisole dress with a fitted waist, its hem stopping just above her knees, she showed off her fair, long legs. Her long hair hung loosely over her shoulders with soft, gentle curls at the ends. She had clearly dressed up with great care, looking pretty and refined. Standing there, her hands clasped in front of her, she held her back straight, her chin tilted slightly upward, her gaze fixed unblinkingly on the young man walking out of the lab doorway. Shinma Bai. Su Wanwan's voice was not loud, yet crystal clear. Several nearby students halted their steps and turned to look at her. She took one step forward, stopping less than half a meter in front of Shinma Bai. I like you. Will you be my boyfriend? The air in the corridor seemed to freeze on the spot. After a brief dead silence, suppressed murmurs burst forth from every direction like floodwater breaking through a sluice gate. Isn't that Su Wanwan from the Foreign Languages School? The department beauty. She's gorgeous and hardworking. I heard she's even pursuing a second major in economics. Who is she confessing to? That boy in thick black-rimmed glasses. He's from computer science, I think. His name's Shin something. Total bookworm, top grades, barely talks to anyone. Wow. He doesn't look well off. What on earth does the department beauty see in him? Is it his coding skills? Good grief. That guy has all the luck. A few boys even uttered that classic line, a beautiful flower stuck on cow dung. Whispers grew louder. Some pulled out their phones, aiming their cameras at the pair in the center of the corridor. Su Wanwan paid no heed to the surrounding chatter. Her eyes stayed locked on Shinma Bai, her lips curving upward, brimming with confident determination. Facing her stood Shinma Bai. The young man wore an ordinary plaid shirt with its cuff buttons fastened neatly, the hem tucked into his trousers, which sat rather high on his waist. On his feet were faded white canvas shoes. Large, thick-lensed black-rimmed glasses covered much of his eyes. Fresh out of the lab, he held an open laptop in his arms, lines of code scrolling across its screen. He glanced at Su Wanwan before looking down at his laptop, then raised his eyes to her once more. I'm not looking for a girlfriend right now, he said. His tone was flat and straightforward, as if answering a multiple-choice question. No apologies, no polite evasions, merely stating a plain fact. He had no interest in dating at the moment. Once the words left his mouth, the surrounding murmurs swelled even louder. How ungrateful. He turns down the department beauty? What is he aiming for, the moon? If I were him, I'd say yes immediately. That's just how top student brains work, all code and no romance, a couple of girls murmured. Though you have to admit, it's pretty cool how he wouldn't give an even for her. Cool? He just lacks social awareness. How will he cope in the real world? Someone retorted. At his reply, Su Wanwan clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Shinma Bai, don't reject me. Don't humiliate me in front of all these people. Her voice trembled, yet every word was sharp and distinct. She stepped another half-step forward. Barely 20 centimeters separated them. The next second, without warning, she stood on tiptoe, rested both hands lightly on his shoulders, and pressed her lips against his. The whole corridor erupted in shock. The boy filming nearly dropped his phone. A teaching assistant spilled coffee all over his hands. Exclamations, whistles, and scattered cheers echoed through the hallway. Shinma Bai froze. His laptop nearly slipped from his grasp. He caught it with one hand, leaving the other hovering awkwardly in midair, fingers curled, uncertain whether to push her away. Her lips were soft and warm, carrying the faint sweet scent of peach lip gloss. Her eyes were wide open, so close he could feel her eyelashes brush lightly against his eyelids, a ticklish sensation. The kiss lasted only a few seconds. Su Wanwan drew back and took half a step away. Her face was flushed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, her lips slightly swollen from contact. Shinma Bai stood rooted to the spot, burning bright red from his ears down his neck. Even behind his thick glasses, his fiery blush was impossible to miss. It took him 5 long seconds for his algorithm-trained mind to process what had just happened. Then he spoke, his voice hoarse, asking a question no one had anticipated. Su Wanwan, why did you bite me? It hurts a little. Su Wanwan, why did you bite me? It hurts a little. Hearing this utterly unexpected question, Su Wanwan almost lost her composure. Before coming here, She had imagined 100 possible reactions from Shin Mabai, pushing her away, staying silent, flat refusal, yet never this. Shin Mabai, I really like you. Please go out with me, be my boyfriend, okay? She gave a delicate, trembling sob and wiped the corners of her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm not bad-looking, am I? You won't lose anything being with me. She bit her lower lip, gazing up at him with a mix of coquettishness and hurt. Is it? Do you think I'm unattractive? Is that why you won't agree? Rough-faced and bewildered, Shin Mabai struggled for a response. He saw her tear-filled eyes, her slightly swollen lips, her clenched fists and trembling shoulders. No, you are very pretty. His reply was quiet and level, a sincere, carefully considered observation. He met her gaze without the slightest evasion, as though evaluating a proposition. Then he fell silent. A long pause stretched on. The onlookers grew restless. Chatter continued to swirl around them, hoots, whistles, shouts urging him to accept. Someone had already shared the recorded clip online. Su Wanwan waited anxiously for his answer. Outwardly she looked vulnerable, but inside her heart hammered. She was like a gambler who had staked everything, waiting for her opponent's final play. She had risked everything, a public confession, a bold kiss. If Shin Mabai rejected her now in full view of everyone, her reputation would be ruined. Fine, came two muffled words. Shin Mabai dropped his gaze, his ears turning an even deeper shade of crimson. Those two quiet words were his answer. Su Wanwan had won her gamble by the narrowest of margins. Tears still glistened on her lashes, yet a bright, sweet smile spread across her face. She reached out and brushed her fingertips lightly against his. It settled then. Shin Mabai glanced down at their touching fingers, then back toward her. His cheeks remained flushed, but he did not pull his hand away. That day, the whole university learned the story. Su Wanwan, the foreign languages department beauty, had publicly confessed to Shin Mabai, a quiet computer science student, in the computer school corridor. He wore unfashionable black-rimmed glasses, earned outstanding grades, and rarely spoke. Plain-looking and plainly dressed, he appeared to come from a modest background. Beside the glamorous Su Wanwan, they looked utterly mismatched. That very evening, the incident blew up on the campus forum and multiple group chats, accompanied by blurry snapshots capturing their kiss. Though grainy, Su Wanwan's dress and Shin Mabai's black-rimmed glasses were clearly recognizable. The comment section exploded. Some called it true love. Others thought the department beauty had lost her mind, unable to see any redeeming quality in the bookworm. Could she have some strange fondness for coders? Many joked Shin Mabai must have saved the galaxy in a past life, praising Su Wanwan's stunning face and figure. I'm also in computer science and I can code, several complained. A few dryly remarked, notify me when they break up. Alone on her dorm bed, Su Wanwan read through all the comments, a wide smile playing on her lips. How had they met in the first place? Why had she boldly confessed to this seemingly ordinary young man and given him her first kiss? That was another story altogether. Their first encounter dated back 3 months earlier. Su Wanwan's menstrual period had arrived several days ahead of schedule, catching her completely off guard. She ransacked every drawer and cabinet in her dormitory only to find no sanitary supplies left. All her roommates were away for classes. Holding her aching abdomen, she sighed and grabbed her phone before hurrying downstairs. The campus convenience store stood next to the cafeteria, only 5 minutes' walk from the girls' dorm. She picked up her usual brand of sanitary products along with a box of brown sugar ginger tea, paid, and stepped out with her plastic shopping bag. She stopped short. Dark storm clouds had rolled in, and heavy rain was pouring down. Fat raindrops smashed against the pavement, kicking up sheets of spray. Beneath the shop awning, several students without umbrellas craned their necks, hoping the downpour would ease. Su Wanwan leaned against the glass shop door at the edge of the small crowd. The walk back was short, but with painful cramps, getting soaked was the last thing she wanted. She had no afternoon classes, so she could simply wait it out. Instead of letting up, the rain intensified. Water streamed off the awning like a curtain, splashing into puddles below. Gusts drove spray onto the sheltered students, who edged backward. Some called roommates to bring umbrellas. Su Wanwan clutched her shopping bag to her chest, the hard box of ginger tea dug into her arm. She pulled out her phone, intending to scroll short-form videos to pass time when a figure emerged through the sheets of rain. Visibility was poor, but she spotted a deep blue umbrella moving steadily forward, footsteps splashing rhythmically in puddles. When the person folded the umbrella under the awning, she saw his face. Pale-skinned with unfashionable black-rimmed glasses, he wore a dark blue plaid shirt with fastened cuffs and carried a laptop bag, the textbook image of a science major boy. He set his umbrella by the doorway, paid Soo-won no glance, and walked straight into the store. 2 or 3 minutes later, he returned carrying a plastic bag stuffed with energy drinks. Bending to retrieve his umbrella, he prepared to leave. Soo-won eyed the colorful bottles in his bag and made up her mind. Resolving to be bold, she stepped beside him. "Excuse me, classmate?" She tilted her head, putting on a sweet, helpless smile, her voice rising softly at the end. "I forgot my umbrella. Could you walk me back to the girls' dormitory?" Shin Ma-bai turned and stared at her for a moment. His gaze lingered on her face for 2 seconds before falling to her shopping bag. The corner of her sanitary product packaging peeked out. He showed no particular reaction, merely glancing out at the torrential rain hammering the awning. "All right," he said quietly, opening the umbrella and tilting it toward her. Side by side, they stepped into the downpour. The deep blue umbrella was spacious for one person but cramped for two. Soo-won pressed close to his left side, her shoulder nearly brushing his arm. She caught the faint, clean scent of inexpensive laundry detergent. Noticing how near she stood, Shin Ma-bai tilted the umbrella further toward her, far more than ordinary politeness demanded. Nearly the entire canopy sheltered her. Not a drop touched her hair or shoulders. Meanwhile, his entire right side remained exposed. Rain soaked his right sleeve, darkening the plaid fabric and plastering it to his arm. Yet he appeared not to notice, keeping the same steady pace and unchanged expression. Soo-won stole a glance. He had deliberately kept a gap of roughly 10 centimeters between their shoulders, letting rain pour onto himself rather than touch her. He would rather get drenched than stand close to her? The thought made Soo-won secretly delighted. This earnest young man's kindness was genuine, not some calculated act to impress girls. People like him were straightforward and easy to read. Soon they reached the covered entrance of the girls' dormitory. Soo-won turned toward him, bright smiling. "Thank you so much, classmate. My name is Soo-won. What's yours?" Shin Ma-bai closed his umbrella. His right side was thoroughly soaked, sleeve stuck to his arm, trousers damp from the knees down. Soo-won, by contrast, was completely dry. "You're home now. Go inside, the rain's getting worse." He held the umbrella and stepped back. "I need to go. Goodbye." Soo-won did not leave. She reached out and caught hold of his rain-soaked right sleeve. The damp cloth felt cool beneath her fingertips. "Tell me your name." Her smile stayed, yet determination shone in her eyes. "I was taught to repay every kindness. I have to know who helped me." Shin Ma-bai looked down at her hand gripping his sleeve. A strange girl was holding him back at the girls' dorm entrance, demanding his name. He felt slightly perplexed. It was only a short walk. "Hardly a great favor. Aren't you being a little unreasonable?" He gently freed his sleeve, as though brushing a stray leaf off his clothing. "Go in, the rain is getting heavier." She grabbed hold of him again, firmer this time, her fingernails pressing lightly against his inner wrist through wet fabric. "Helpless," he murmured. "Shin Ma-bai. Computer science. But you don't need to remember, it was nothing." Hearing the name she wanted, Soo-won lit up. She let go of his arm, stepped back and laced her hands behind her back, tilting her head like a happy child given candy. "Shin Ma-bai, such a nice name. I'll remember it. Thank you again, Shin." She waved and bounded into the dormitory. Shin Ma-bai watched her go, then turned to leave. He reopened his umbrella and headed back toward the College of Computer Science through the downpour. Half his clothes were already soaked, yet he held the umbrella upright, treating the whole episode as a trivial distraction amid his coding work. Little did he know, Soo-won had stopped on the second-floor stairwell. Pressing to the rain-streaked window, she watched his dark blue umbrella shrink along the sycamore-lined path until it vanished around a bend. A mischievous smile curved her lips. "Shin Ma-bai. What a sweet, silly boy." The girl's voice was so faint that only she herself could hear it. Her fingertips, painted with new-colored nail polish, tapped lightly against the windowsill, one tap after another, carrying a rhythm of quiet certainty. How gullible. What an idiot. She pulled her hand back from the windowsill and slipped it into her coat pocket. "This time, I'm definitely going to get you. My dearest male lead." Soo-won muttered to herself, most of her words drowned out by the rain outside the window. A minute or two passed. Only after she could no longer catch sight of Shin Mobai's figure did the girl turn around and walk slowly upstairs, humming a tuneless little song under her breath. Back in her dorm room, the first thing she did was go to the bathroom. Then she boiled water with the electric kettle and brewed a cup of brown sugar ginger tea. The reddish-brown liquid steamed inside the clear glass cup. The aroma of ginger, mixed with the sweetness of brown sugar, slowly spread through the dormitory. She carried the cup over to her desk, blew on the hot steam, and took a small sip. The dorm was empty. All her roommates were still in class. She soon set the cup aside and opened her laptop. Once the computer booted up, instead of opening a browser or any social app, she clicked directly on an untitled document on her desktop. The pages held bizarre-sounding notes, and the girl who had written them was no ordinary college student. She had already died once. It was a mysterious occurrence that could not be explained by science. No time travel, no system, no magic ring, no mysterious elderly benefactor. She had simply died, only to wake up again, transported back to shortly after her freshman year of college had begun. Even now, Su Wanwan could still clearly remember everything that had happened right before her eyes closed for good. In her previous life, she had lived to the age of 26. She rented a cramped subdivided flat in the capital, commuted to work on the subway every day, and earned barely enough to cover rent and meals. On weekends, scrolling through moments, she watched her former university classmates get married, go abroad, or climb the career ladder, while she stayed cooped up alone in her rental apartment, ordering cheap takeout food. On the night fate intervened, Su Wanwan had worked overtime till 1 in the morning on an urgent last-minute task. On her way home, she was hit by a truck running a red light. Then she woke up, first inside a strange dimensionless void, and later in her university dorm bed. Her phone displayed the date, the 3rd week of her freshman semester. It took Su Wanwan several days to convince herself it was neither a dream nor a hallucination. Besides being reborn and returning to her college years, she had discovered something even more astounding. During her brief stay in that strange void after death, she had accidentally uncovered the truth of her world. This world was a novel. More precisely, it was a collection of countless novels, and she was merely an extra character in one of them. The story did not revolve around her. Its protagonist was Shin Mabai, a computer science major. The book told the story of how this once unremarkable bookish young man grew to become the founder of one of the tech industry's youngest unicorn enterprises. Within its pages, he earned his doctorate at 25, founded his first company at 26, and graced the cover of Forbes by 30. And what about her? Su Wanwan was a background character who appeared fewer than 3 times. Though they had attended the same university, they had never crossed paths. None of that mattered, though. What truly mattered was this: Su Wanwan had been reborn. Carrying full memories of the plot, she was back in her college days. This time, she knew all about Shin Mobai's impressive family background. She knew his mother was a university professor, his father a powerful business tycoon, and his grandfather a towering figure among the capital's elite circles. She knew which competitions he would join, when he would skip grades to study overseas, when he would develop the groundbreaking technology that changed his life, and when he would launch his first company. Most importantly, she knew whom Shin Mabai would marry in the original novel: Lin Wan, the daughter of one of the Shin family's household staff. In the original story, before Shin Mabai went abroad for further studies, he was manipulated at a party and ended up spending the night with Lin Wan. The next morning, the girl sat on the bed, tearful and distraught, claiming she could not go on living. Stunned, he told her he would take responsibility. And, just like that, they got married. Every time Su Wanwan thought about that plotline, a tangled swirl of emotions welled up inside her. In her past life, she had once seen an interview with Shin Mabai on television. Dressed in a tailored suit, sharp-featured and calm-spoken, he was utterly captivating, a far cry from the awkward, unfashionable boy he had been in college. Su Wanwan had thought at the time, "Why can't this perfect man be mine? I saw him back in college, didn't I?" Then she saw his wife standing beside him for the interview, a gentle, looking quiet young woman smiling softly from behind his shoulder. It was not Su Wanwan. But fortune had granted her a second chance. Given a do-over and foreknowledge of everyone's fate, she would get to the male lead before Lin Wan did. Who said background characters could never become the heroine? Whoever ended up with the male lead would be the real heroine of the story. Besides, she had suffered so much in her previous life. dying alone on a street in the dead of night. She deserved a different ending this time around. A brighter smile spread across Su Wanwan's face as these thoughts crossed her mind. She took another sip of brown, sugar ginger tea and began typing furiously on her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of text popping up on the screen. Target to pursue, Shen Mabai. Identity, freshman majoring in computer science / original novel male lead / future tech, industry magnate. Family background, connections spanning politics, business, and academia. Personality traits, brilliant science, stream student, socially obtuse, lacking common sense, weak sense of personal boundaries, blunt, spoken, easily offends others, very few friends, never been in a relationship, fully devoted to coding. Does not take the initiative to pursue others, but will most likely not know how to reject someone who approaches him. Appearance, fair, skinned, his outstanding looks hidden behind black, framed glasses, poor taste in clothing, minimal desire for material comforts. Most students on campus believe he comes from a poor family. Weaknesses, poor at turning others down. Exaggerated sense of responsibility. Soft-hearted. Pursuit difficulty, expected timeline, establish romantic relationship within 3 months. Beneath this laid detailed pursuit plans. Drawing or wrote into IDOTH ally on a drama she had ever watched in her previous life, Su Wanwan jotted down a long list of strategies. Chance encounters, borrowing items, asking for his help, repaying favors, treating him to meals, coffee dates, study tutoring, caring for him when unwell, pretending to be a couple, creating gossip, engineering private time together. Each entry noted applicable scenarios and expected outcomes. Her next step, marked at the top of the list, was to go to the library, run into him by coincidence, repay past kindness, keep him company, and invite him out for a meal or coffee. Su Wanwan finished the last sip of ginger tea. 2 full pages of plans filled the document, the cursor blinking at the end of the last line. Outside, the rain had stopped. Dark clouds parted, sunlight spilling through gaps in the sky and falling onto a small potted succulent sitting on the dorm windowsill. Leaning back in her chair, Su Wanwan stretched and stared at her battle plan on the screen, brimming with confidence. The next day, Su Wanwan got herself a library card. She had rarely visited the library before. As an English major, she mostly spent her time in language labs and foreign teachers' offices. The library was only for last-minute cramming before final exams. Things were different now. She needed to pursue Shin Ma-bai, and he practically lived in the library. Su Wanwan wandered around the library for an entire week and finally pinpointed his regular spot, a window seat on the 5th floor. Every afternoon that week, she lingered on the 5th floor, pretending to study while observing him. Shin Ma-bai kept a schedule as rigid as a programmed machine. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, when he had no classes, he stayed from 8 in the morning until 10 at night. Aside from stepping out for lunch, he occupied that 5th floor window seat the whole time. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, once his classes ended at 4:30 in the afternoon, he would head straight to the library and stay until closing time. He always took that exact seat. It was the last row by the west, facing French windows on the 5th floor. Computer science bookshelves stood to its right, and few people sat nearby, making it his quiet private workstation. Once seated, he opened his laptop, put on his headphones, and vanished into the world of coding, oblivious to everything around him. Su Wanwan snuck glances 3 times. Each time he sat there, lines of code scrolling across his screen. When she walked past pretending to look for books, she could not understand a single line of it. Her observation phase complete, Su Wanwan was ready to act. It was a Tuesday. She dressed carefully early in the morning. No heavy makeup, just light foundation and faint lip gloss. She wore a clean white knit sweater, her long hair loose with soft natural curls at the ends. Su Wanwan checked herself in the dorm mirror, turning her head from side to side. She looked pure and innocent, the picture of a well-behaved young woman. Then she slung a canvas bag over her shoulder and headed out. When she reached the 5th floor library, Shin Ma-bai was already there. He sat in his usual window seat, laptop open, code scrolling rapidly across the display. A half-empty energy drink and an open copy of Introduction to Algorithms lay on the table. Headphones were in his ears, his expression detached from the world around him. Su Wanwan took a deep breath and adjusted her expression. She circled around the bookshelves, picked up 2 books she had no intention of reading, and pretended to get lost among the stacks. After circling twice, she walked over to his table and spoke in her sweetest voice. Wow, Shinmabai? What a coincidence. Running into you again. Her voice was pleasantly loud enough to sound pleasantly surprised without being noisy. The slight upward lilt in her tone carried genuine, sounding delight. She stood beside his desk, tilting her head as she looked at him. Her canvas bag slipped down one shoulder, and she steadied it with one hand. Only Suwon knew that this simple, looking little gesture had been rehearsed many times in front of her dorm mirror. Shinmabai lifted his head. Behind his black, framed glasses, his eyes met hers with total lack of reaction. No hint of recognition, no curiosity about her presence, no visible shift from his focused work state. He simply took off his headphones and hung them under his chin, waiting for her to continue speaking. Actually, could you help me out once more? She hugged the two books tighter against her chest and tilted her head with an obedient smile. I read a popular science article online and got curious about computer science. I'd like to give it a try. Could you tell me where I can find introductory textbooks? Shinmabai stood up right away. He walked around the table, led her to the bookshelves, scanned the book spines, pulled out computer science, an introduction, and handed it to her. Then he turned straight back to his seat and put his headphones back on. He had said only 5 words the whole time. You can read this. Su Wanwan held the book in her hands and stared at his cold, shouldered back among the shelves. She bit her lower lip hard, her fingers tightening around the book. It was fine. This was what she had expected. She cheered herself on silently, quietly pulled out the chair next to his seat, and sat down. The chair legs scraped softly against the wooden floor. She opened Computer Science, an introduction. Page 1 covered the history of computers, page 2 binary numbers, page 3 Boolean logic. Su Wanwan could not bring herself to process a single word. Still, she flipped pages earnestly, occasionally drawing pencil marks across paragraphs she could not comprehend, feigning serious note-taking. Around noon, library patrons began leaving for the cafeteria. She closed her book and leaned slightly toward him. A faint scent of gardenia perfume drifted over. Shinmabai. He looked up. Thank you for helping me find the book. And thank you for walking me back to my dorm building that rainy day. The girl smiled, 2 shallow dimples showing on her pretty face. Let me treat you to lunch in the cafeteria as thanks for your help. Without the slightest pause, the young man replied, no need. It was nothing. But Su Wanwan bit her lip, her tone softening into gentle persuasion. You've helped me twice. My parents always told me to repay kindness. I won't feel right unless I buy you a. Shinmobai's fingers hovering over the keyboard finally stilled. He raised his head and met her eyes. His expression was sincere and confused, not impatient or cold. He genuinely failed to understand why she kept bringing this up. That book is public library material. Anyone could take it. That rainy day, I would have helped whoever had called out to me. You don't owe me any repayment. His tone was flat, not polite refusal, just a plain statement of fact. Hearing this exasperating reply, Su Wanwan's smile almost slipped off her face. Her lips still curved upward and her dimples remained visible, yet amusement had faded from her eyes. After staring at him for 2 seconds in silence, she stood up clutching her books, nodded toward him, and said, All right, I'm going for lunch now. She turned and walked quickly toward the staircase. The instant she turned away, her smile vanished completely, as if erased. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tightened, and her footsteps grew heavier. She dared not stamp her feet in the hallway. Noise would draw attention in the quiet 5th-floor library. Su Wanwan bottled up her frustration until she reached the stairwell, certain no one was nearby, then she hissed in quiet anger. Shinmabai. What a blockhead. Idiot. Fool. I'm so mad. After letting out her pent-up irritation, she grabbed her canvas bag and descended the stairs. In her mind, she raised the difficulty rating of her pursuit plan. Su Wanwan had just confirmed something important. When Shinmabai looked at her, there was no admiration, no curiosity, not even objective awareness that she was a good-looking young woman. Whether she wore dresses or knitwear, whether she wore perfume or smiled charmingly, to him she was no different from the books lined up on the shelves. He spoke without giving people social leeway, though probably not on purpose. As the novel had described, his thought patterns worked differently. He spoke bluntly. That fool had no idea how to give a girl social face. He treated every comment like a programming problem, answered it, and terminated the conversation. You want to buy me dinner? Not necessary. You need to find a book? Third shelf over. Every sentence brought the exchange to an abrupt end, just like a line of code terminated by a semicolon. This was so difficult, Su Wanwan sighed to herself. Still, she refused to give up. When she reached the library lobby downstairs and drank a cup of cold water from the water dispenser, her thoughts returned to her pursuit document. Strategy 1. Chance encounter plus gratitude plus invitation to dine. Poor results. That was not the end, though. She had strategy 2, 3, and 4 waiting. Pages of plans were saved on her computer. Inviting him to meals was clearly not working. His words meant that right now, she was no different from any random stranger in his eyes. Pressing on with favors as an excuse would only make him think she was unreasonable and could not take a hinty. For a new opening that he could not turn down. What sort of thing would he have trouble refusing? Su Wanwan suddenly smiled. Advanced mathematics. He was top of his grade. And she was terrible at this subject. Even better, the male lead possessed a strong sense of responsibility and would not stand by when someone was struggling. At this thought, Su Wanwan tossed her empty paper cup into the trash bin with a snap. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through a group chat record. It contained the first-year computer science class schedule, which she had gotten from a student union member a few days earlier. Tomorrow was Wednesday. Shin Mobai finished class at 4:30 in the afternoon. He would pass down a quiet corridor on his way out of teaching Building 3. She opened the screenshot of the timetable and studied it carefully. Her next battle plan was finalized in an instant. The next afternoon at 4:30, Su Wanwan stood exactly where she planned, waiting for her target outside the corridor of teaching Building 3 of the Computer Science College. This corridor connected the building's side exit to the bike shed, the main route computer science students took after class. She had changed her look today. Her hair was tied in a high ponytail, fully exposing her face with no stray bangs. She wore a slim, fitting black sweater, dark, gray straight-leg trousers, and simple white canvas shoes. Her whole appearance was neat and capable, the style she had spent an entire evening researching, the kind of hard-working, motivated young woman an academic-minded boy would appreciate. Not overly glamorous, nor cloyingly sweet. She looked like a serious student genuinely seeking tutoring help. Su Wanwan had even considered buying black, framed glasses similar to his for a matching pair effect. In the end, she rejected the idea. They were far too plain and frumpy, a waste of her natural good looks, which counted among her few advantages. In her hand, she held her advanced math textbook. Its formulas and symbols looked utterly incomprehensible to her. Before leaving the dorm, she had reread several sample problems from the opening chapters, so she could at least articulate what each question was asking. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Shin Mobai emerged from the side exit on time, carrying his ever-present laptop bag. He wore another plaid shirt, light gray this time, nearly identical to the dark blue one he had worn before. Presumably, he owned a dozen identical shirts to rotate through. The young man walked at a moderate pace, his eyes fixed forward, yet his gaze seemed to settle nowhere in particular. Su Wanwan took a deep breath, hugged her advanced mathematics textbook against her chest, and trotted over to him. It was not a full sprint dash. She kept a close eye on maintaining an air of grace. When she finally came to a stop in front of him, the girl was slightly out of breath. A faint natural blush spread across her cheeks, partly from the short run, and partly because she had been holding her breath ever since she started from the end of the hallway to create that breathless look. Shin Mobai. She lifted her eyes to meet his, her expression carefully calibrated. 3 parts shyness, 3 parts sincerity, 4 parts admiration. I'm really struggling with advanced mathematics and am at risk of failing the course. I've heard you rank first in your grade. Could you walk me through a few problems? It won't take up much of your time. Shin Mobai glanced at her. Then he sighed. It was a subtle sigh, barely more than a small rise and fall of his chest as air flowed slowly out through his nose. No emotion showed on the young man's face, neither irritation nor distaste, only the helpless, bewildered look of thinking, why do I keep running into you? Still, he did not turn her down. Instead, he gave a faint nod and agreed. They did not head to the library to go over the exercises. A wide windowsill in the teaching building corridor was perfectly sized to hold textbooks and scratch paper. Shin Mobai set his laptop bag on the floor beside his feet, took the advanced mathematics textbook from the girl, flipped through it, and asked which sections troubled her. Su Wanwan randomly pointed to a chapter, Limits. He nodded, open to that section, and began explaining patiently. He walked through the concept of limits 3 times in total. The first time, he used the formal textbook definition, the epsilon, delta notation. Su Wanwan understood not a single word. When he finished, he shot her a quick glance. Judging from her blank, confused expression, he realized she had not followed, so he switched approaches of his own accord. The second explanation relied on visuals. He drew a coordinate system on scratch paper, sketched an asymptote, and tapped the line with the tip of his pen. See? It draws infinitely near yet never actually touches it. Su Wanwan, however, only stared absently at his hands. His fingers were long, with well-defined knuckles. He held the pen beautifully, and his nails were neatly trimmed. For the third attempt, he used a real-life analogy. Imagine you are walking toward a wall. With each step, you cover only half the remaining distance. You will never reach the wall, but you will keep getting closer. The young man looked straight at her earnestly. That is what a limit is. Su Wanwan suddenly realized he was waiting for her response. Without thinking, she nodded hastily. Shin Mabai frowned, clearly unconvinced she truly grasped the idea. He snatched the pen from her hand and wrote a brand new practice problem on her scratch paper. Then work through this for me. Staring at the problem, the girl's mind went completely blank. The young man waited quietly. He watched her grip the pen, hovering above the paper for nearly a full minute without making a single mark. At last, he spoke in a calm tone, and his words made her face burn hot instantly. Su Wanwan, your foundational knowledge is very poor. He stated it plainly, no softening phrases. Not, your foundations could be better, nor, you might need to do some catch-up work. Just the unvarnished observation, your foundational knowledge is very poor. Subject, predicate, complement, a complete, definitive assessment. Most young women would feel embarrassed being told something like that by a peer. Naturally, Su Wanwan was no exception. Her cheeks flushed all at once. This blush was not feigned, not brought on by holding her breath. Genuine shame burned from her neck all the way up to the tips of her ears. Truth be told, her math really was terrible. She had barely passed any math exams throughout high school, and advanced mathematics felt like reading an alien script. Shin Mabai was merely stating an objective fact. Still, hearing that fact come out of his mouth stung all the more. He was not trying to humiliate her. He was simply reporting what he saw. After delivering that assessment, the bookish Shin Mabai flipped to the textbook's table of contents and began walking Su Wanwan through core concepts from the very start. He wrote point after point, the definition of a function, elementary functions, composite functions, sequence limits, function limits. His handwriting was neat and tidy, and he noted down page numbers beside every formula. Standing beside him, Su Wanwan watched the side profile of his bowed, focused face, and her heart felt tangled with conflicting feelings. She had set out to charm this young man to secure a better life for herself. She had not come back to campus to become a model student. Advanced mathematics was merely a tool to get close to him, not something she genuinely wanted to learn. Her original plan had been simple: get Shin Mabai to notice her, let him remember her face, make him see her as sweet and reliant, and slowly foster feelings that stretched beyond textbook exercises. Instead, he was earnestly, wholeheartedly teaching her about limits. He truly believed she had sought him out to study advanced mathematics. Good heavens! He really was hopelessly oblivious. Still, as the saying goes, genuine naivety defeats calculated manipulation. Su Wanwan nearly felt like screaming out of frustration. Then another thought struck her. This could actually be a perfect excuse to spend time with Shin Mabai. If formulas and code were the only way to draw near to him, then so be it. She would learn alongside him. What was more, having the top-ranked student tutor her meant regular one-on-one time. She could admire his concentrated, undistracted profile as he explained problems. It was quite a worthwhile trade-off. Just at that moment, Shin Mabai turned the page of his half-finished outline and looked up at her. If you want to pass the final exam, I can draw up a study schedule for you. Your foundations are far too weak. You need systematic tutoring. Su Wanwan tucked a strand of hair that had fallen beside her face behind her ear and gave a sweet, shy smile. That sounds wonderful. My math really is terrible. I hardly passed any high-school math exams, so advanced mathematics goes without saying. I will have to rely on you from now on, Teacher Shin. She drew out the final 2 words playfully, her tone laced with a hint of gentle teasing. Shin Ma-bai showed no reaction whatsoever. He simply finished writing his outline, tore the sheet off, and handed it over. "We will meet at the library at 6 o'clock next Tuesday." Then he bent down to pick up his laptop bag and walked away. Without so much as a backward glance, Shin Ma-bai put considerable effort into Su Wanwan's study plan. When their first formal tutoring session began, he pulled a folded sheet of A4 paper out of his laptop bag and passed it to her. It was plain printer paper, blank and unlined. Neat handwritten notes covered it, ranging from Chapter 1, Functions and Limits, all the way to the final chapter on differential equations. Beside each chapter were planned tutoring dates and estimated session lengths. Chapter 1. Function Fundamentals, 1 session, 2 class hours. Chapter 2. Limits and Continuity, 2 sessions, 4 class hours. Chapter 3. Derivatives, 2 sessions, 4 class hours. The schedule extended all the way until 2 weeks before final exams, covering every chapter, with 2 extra class hours reserved for comprehensive review at the end. At the bottom, it read, "Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening, 5th floor library, usual spot. Shin Ma-bai Su Wanwan." The young man slid the sheet across the table toward her. Su Wanwan took it politely and stared down at the page. She imagined him working on this with the same focused, unemotional mindset he brought to coding. There was no subtext of "I am helping you because I like you," no hint of "I am happy you asked for my help," no trace of "I spent nights drafting this because you matter to me." Su Wanwan understood perfectly well. He treated tutoring her like a programming problem. Input: Su Wanwan's poor mathematical foundations. Output: a custom, tailored study plan. The logical steps in between involved identifying key content, difficult sections, and allocating appropriate study hours. Nothing more, nothing less. Even so, her fingers tightened slightly around the sheet of paper. The edges crinkled softly beneath her fingertips. Su Wanwan struggled to name this strange new feeling. It was not pure gratitude, nor was it infatuation, something unlike anything she had experienced before. In her past life, plenty of young men had pursued her at university because of her looks. Some brought flowers, others expensive gifts. Some played the guitar beneath her dormitory building, others booked whole restaurants to treat her to meals. Yet no one had ever written out an advanced, mathematics study plan for her. Of course, she had never given anyone the chance to do so. She had shut all those suitors out, determined only to pick someone wealthy, handsome, and utterly compliant. Now she held this A4 sheet. Its edges had been carefully trimmed with scissors, and many of the projected hour estimates had been crossed out lightly in pencil, proof he had revised the plan repeatedly after finishing the first draft. She lifted her gaze toward him and parted her lips to speak. "Thank you" felt far too trivial. "You put so much work into this" sounded overly suggestive. "Do you treat everyone this seriously?" would come across as prying. In the end, she said nothing at all. Instead, she carefully folded the paper and tucked it deep inside the innermost pocket of her canvas bag. For their next tutoring session, Su Wanwan dressed in a ladylike knee-length light blue dress with a fitted waist and soft A-line skirt. She wore light makeup, sheer foundation, muted earth, toned eyeshadow, and lengthening mascara on her lashes. Before leaving her dorm, she dabbed a little perfume behind her ears, a faint, subtle scent. She twisted side to side in front of the mirror. The outfit struck the right balance, noticeable yet not overly deliberate. Then she slung her bag over her shoulder and headed out. When she reached their usual window, side spot on the library's 5th floor, Shin Ma-bai was already seated. Su Wanwan sat down beside him and pulled her chair a little closer. The chair legs scraped softly across the wooden floor. She quickly took out her advanced mathematics textbook, scratch paper, and stationery. Shin Ma-bai skipped small talk entirely and opened the textbook to begin. The definition of a function. He jumped straight into the lesson, not even greeting her with a simple, "You're here." He explained textbook content clearly, not merely reciting passages. He broke every concept down, rephrasing ideas in his own words. For each new concept, he offered multiple explanations, drawing diagrams and using everyday analogies until Su Wanwan nodded to signal she understood, and only then would he move forward. Throughout the session, his eyes stayed fixed on the textbook and scratch paper. He only glanced occasionally at her exercise notebook. He did not notice her dress, her subtle makeup, or her perfume, none of the details she had spent so long preparing. So for the third tutoring session, Su Wanwan switched tactics decisively. She bought 2 large, bright red Fuji apples. She washed them thoroughly in her dorm bathroom until water still glistened on their skins, placed them inside a fresh, keeping bag, and set a fruit peeler alongside. A token of thanks for your teaching. She smiled and set the bag down on the table between them. The apples rolled gently inside, bumping against the plastic handle of the peeler. Please have some. Shin Maobai glanced at the 2 apples, then looked over at her. You can have them. I do not care much for fruit, especially apples. Peeling them is too much trouble. His tone was neutral. He opened the textbook, ready to resume the lesson on limits they had left unfinished. Su Wanwan pressed her palm firmly down on the book to hold it shut. No way. I brought these specially to thank you for tutoring me. You have to accept them, or I will feel terrible. He looked at her again. Su Wanwan could not tell whether his expression held frustration, confusion, or merely the thought, why must you make things complicated? Still, he did not argue further and did not repeat that he disliked apples. Su Wanwan smiled. She listened intently as he walked through 2 example problems and finished an exercise he assigned on the spot. Once she set down her pen, she glanced at the apples and peeler, then back toward him. Her tone was natural. I am a little thirsty. Let us eat these apples, 1 apiece. Shin Maobai, could you peel them for me? I am bad at peeling fruit. Last time I cut my hand badly and bled quite a lot. It was not a polite request, nor a humble plea. It was her signature soft, toned indirect command. Her voice sounded sweet and cajoling, yet her words carried an instruction. Shin Maobai fell silent. Even so, he picked up an apple and the peeler. The girl pretended to work on exercises, stealing occasional glances upward. He peeled with great concentration. The blade traced the apple's curve from top to bottom in one continuous spiral. Long strips of red peel hung down from his fingers like thin satin ribbons. He removed very little flesh, leaving the apple's surface smooth and polished, almost like polished jade. His movements were quick and fluid, just as deft as when he typed lines of code. Once finished, he set the peeled apple onto a clean paper napkin and pushed it toward her. The large, glossy fruit sat neatly centered on the napkin, like an exhibit on display. Then he took the second apple and kept peeling. Why are you staring at me? You said you were thirsty, so eat. He spoke without looking up, his tone as flat as when he taught lessons, simply stating a fact. Peeled apples oxidize quickly. You ought to eat them right away. Soon the second apple was done, equally smooth. He laid both peeled apples side by side on separate napkins, returned the peeler to the plastic bag, and wiped his fingers with another napkin. Su Wanwan stared at the 2 fruits and asked suddenly, You are so skilled at peeling. Do you peel apples for other people often, Shin Maobai? The young man lifted his head, looking genuinely confused, as if he failed to understand why she would ask such an odd question. No. I hardly ever peel apples even for myself. Su Wanwan, you can eat both. I am telling you the truth, I really do not like apples much. They taste all right, but they are too much hassle to eat. His tone stayed as unemotional as ever, as though commenting on the day's weather. Su Wanwan froze for a moment. She looked down at the 2 neatly peeled apples, their flesh already starting to turn faintly yellow from oxidation. She picked one up quickly and took a bite. The flesh was crisp, sweet juice bursting across her tongue. The sweetness made her squint slightly. That day, as usual, Shin Maobai remained completely oblivious to romantic undertones. Su Wanwan ended up eating both large apples by herself, and she was too full for dinner that night. Even so, she found herself thinking that this was not so bad after all. This clueless boy still paid no mind to her outfits and makeup. He still spoke in plain factual statements. He still frowned when she tried to drag out their study sessions. Yet the apples he had peeled for her had tasted sweet. Very sweet. At the close of their 3rd tutoring session, Su Wanwan finally succeeded in getting Shin Maobai's personal WeChat account. The process was far from romantic. As he packed up his laptop bag to leave, she pulled out her phone, pulled up her WeChat QR code, and held it straight out toward him. Shin Maobai, let us add each other on WeChat. If I get stuck on homework problems after class, I can message you. He glanced at her phone screen, then glanced at her, and replied with a plain no. He pulled out his own mobile device. It was an older domestic, brand phone, nothing like the models Su Wanwan used. A thin crack ran across the top left corner of the screen. Clearly it had been dropped, yet he had never gotten it replaced. He opened WeChat and scanned her QR code efficiently. Shin Maobai's WeChat ID was a meaningless string of characters, WID_8S3K2M7X9P1Q. His profile picture was a solid dark blue block. When Suwon zoomed in, she guessed it was a screenshot of some code output, dense white text set against a deep, blue background, completely unintelligible to her. Staring at that avatar, she rolled her eyes inwardly. Truly, every part of him screamed dull in bold, oversized font. Still, back in her dorm that evening, she sent him a cheerful sticker, a little white kitten waving its paw with the pink text, "Hello there." He sent back only one character, "Oh." No sticker, no punctuation. Just that single isolated syllable, not even a period. Suwon stared at that single word for several seconds, huffed softly, locked her phone screen, and gathered her things to take a shower. Fine. At the very least, she was now on his WeChat contact list, an important milestone in her plan. She had moved from the girl sitting beside him in the library to a contact saved in his phone. On top of that, she had also gotten his phone number under the pretense of in case WeChat fails. Shin Mo-bai had rattled off the digits without hesitation. When saving the contact, she first considered labeling him clueless guy, then deleted that and typed teacher Shin, adding a little book, worm emoji beside the name. Over the following week, Suwon launched her gradual WeChat campaign. She did not bombard him with math questions every single day. That would feel far too forced, and she could not possibly come up with that many genuine questions anyway. Her strategy was simple: send one genuine homework related question every so often and mostly share light-hearted, entertaining content. She wanted him to grow used to seeing her name pop up in his chat list. On Monday night, she sent him a funny short clip of a food vlogger's total failure. A young man had tried recreating a trendy viral cake, only to bake something resembling a lump of charcoal so hard a knife could barely cut it. When he slammed it down on a table, the surface chipped. She typed 3 haha and added a comment. "This reminds me of that limit problem you went over. Looks easy, but everything goes wrong when you actually try it." 40 minutes later, he replied with one word: "Oh." On Wednesday afternoon, she saw a joke on the campus forum and sent him a screenshot. A computer science student, driven half crazy by coding, had posted in his dorm group chat asking whether printf could print a girlfriend. The replies read, "Wake up. Your lack of a girlfriend is not caused by bad coding skills." Her accompanying text read, "Are all computer science majors like this?" This time his reply was a little longer, no longer just one O. Printf is an output function in C language. It cannot print a girlfriend, it can only print character strings. Attached was a link to the encyclopedia entry for the printf function. Suwon tapped on the encyclopedia link. Staring at screen, full terms like formatted output, standard output stream, and variable argument functions, she took a deep breath. She tossed her phone onto the pillow, rolled over, and buried her face in it. What a dork, she thought to herself. Yet right after that, she picked up her phone again and kept texting him. She refused to believe she could not warm up this block of stone. After all, in her past life, he had gone on to marry and have children. That proved he was not beyond warming, he just needed more heat. And she had all the patience in the world. 2 days later, Friday night. Fresh out of the shower, Suwon sat on her bed towel, drying her hair when her phone lit up out of the blue. She picked it up for a glance. A message from Shin Mo-bai? She froze for 2 seconds, nearly dropping the phone. He had forwarded a funny piece about programming. Some coder had written in code comments, "I wrote this function at 3 in the morning. I have no idea what it does back then, and I do not feel like fixing it now. Please do not touch it either." Attached was a screenshot filled with warning-laden comments. Along with it were 6 short words. This one also blew up. No, haha, no emojis, no extra words at all. Still, Suwon stared at those words for a long time. Then she laughed. Not the smug laugh of making progress in a pursuit, but a genuine, spontaneous chuckle that escaped her. Her roommate Jo Jing poked her head down from the upper bunk. "Won, what are you laughing at?" "Nothing, just saw a funny joke online." She switched off the screen, tucked the phone under her pillow, and went back to drying her hair. The smile lingered on her lips. This was the very first time Shin Mo-bai had messaged her on his own initiative. Not to answer a question she had deliberately raised, not in response to something she had sent first. He had seen something he found amusing and thought of her. Suwon understood almost nothing of the dense comments in the screenshot. She had no clue what that function even was. It did not matter. Shin Mo-bai had texted her first. That counted as progress. Proof that all her hard work had not gone to waste. One Saturday morning, for once, Su Wanwan did not head straight for the library to look for that book, obsessed nerd. She lounged lazily in her dorm bed, staring blankly at her phone. Her roommate Zhou Jing came out of the bathroom, toweling her hair, and glanced over. Wanwan, why are you still here? You are not off to the library to study. Su Wanwan quickly darkened her phone screen and put on a smile. I am worn out. Taking a little break. I will head over later. Another roommate, Zhao Xiaoding, popped her head out from the upper bunk holding a bag of potato chips. Hey Wanwan, are you free tonight? It is my birthday. I am treating everyone out for dinner. Barbecue by the school gate, then karaoke at the K Mall. We are pulling an all-nighter. Leaning against the headboard, Su Wanwan thought it over. She realized she had barely gone out to have fun in ages. Ever since her rebirth, her days had fallen into a rigid routine. Classes, tutoring, figuring out how to get that dork to open up, more tutoring, more classes. Somewhere along the way, she seemed to revolve entirely around Shinma Bai, even on weekends. Back in her previous university life, she had loved hanging out and shopping. She knew every popular karaoke song by heart. She really ought to enjoy herself for once. Shinma Bai was not going anywhere. One day off would not ruin her pursuit of him. She might as well give herself a holiday. Even hard, working employees got weekends, after all. She nodded crisply. Count me in. Zhou Jing cheered. Smiling, Su Wanwan grabbed her phone, opened Shinma Bai's chat box, and typed fast. I am going out of campus with my roommates tonight. Can we move today's tutoring session to the afternoon? Or if you are busy or unavailable, we can just meet next Tuesday instead. She set the phone on her bedside table and got up to wash. When she came back, there was a new reply. He had taken more than 10 minutes to write back. That works. Come find me in the library at 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. I am fine with it. I am already in the library. A grin tugged at Su Wanwan's lips. She sent a cute meme, a rabbit holding a small sign reading, okay, with little pink hearts floating beside it. Then she opened her wardrobe and rummaged through her clothes. She had made up her mind. She was going to dress up nicely today. That dork Shinma Bai would probably not notice anyway, but she could not show up looking sloppy for barbecue and karaoke at the mall with her roommates. Besides, what if? What if he suddenly started paying attention? Full of energy, she pulled every dress out of the closet and spread them across the bed, holding each one up against herself. She finally settled on a green dress that ended just above her knees. Its fitted waist accentuated her slim figure, and a tiny bow was tied at the neckline. With her outfit sorted, she sat in front of the mirror for nearly an hour. She curled her hair into soft, loose waves over her shoulders and clipped on a glittering rhinestone hairpin that sparkled under the lamplight. She did a full face of makeup, sheer foundation, warm light, brown eyeshadow, long lifted lashes, and peachy lip gloss. Around her neck sat a delicate thin chain choker with a tiny pearl pendant. She even painted her nails shimmery peach pink polish. Holding her hands up to the light, she admired how her 10 fingernails glinted. Zhao Xiaoding poked her head out again, the chip bag crinkling loudly. Wow, Wanwan, are you going on a blind date? You look so gorgeous. Even I am almost smitten. Without turning away from the mirror, Su Wanwan tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Cut it out. I am dressing up out of respect for your birthday. Lies. You never got this dressed up for Zhou Jing's birthday. That was then, this is now. Zhao Xiaoding huffed, pulled her head back inside and mumbled, you are definitely hiding something, before dropping the subject. At noon, she had lunch with her roommates in the cafeteria. While waiting in line for food, Zhou Jing kept pressing her. You spend so much time buried in the library these days. What on earth are you doing? Are you seeing someone? Su Wanwan popped a piece of braised pork into her mouth and mumbled. No. I am studying. Studying. Zhou Jing looked utterly incredulous. You, Su Wanwan? Studying. Advanced mathematics. You know I was bad at math in high school, and university level is even harder to follow. So I asked a kind classmate to tutor me. Boy or girl? Zhao Xiaoding asked immediately. Boy. The two roommates exchanged meaningful glances, but Su Wanwan had already picked up her tray and walked away. The hem of her dress swishing lightly past the plastic cafeteria chairs. After lunch, Su Wanwan headed straight for the library with her advanced mathematics textbook. She walked along the stone path under the wutong trees in white canvas sneakers. November sunlight filtered through the leaves and glinted off her rhinestone hairpin. She was in high spirits, not exactly because she was about to see Shinma Bai, but because she was going out for fun tonight. On the fifth-floor reading room, Shin Mabai was seated at his usual window seat as expected. His laptop was open, displaying lines upon lines of colorful code against a black background. He wore a light, blue plaid shirt, clearly from the same batch as all his other blue-toned plaid shirts, just a different shade. Su Won-on walked over, set her textbook down and sat beside him. Shin Mabai, I am here. Let us get started. I need to leave at 3 something. Shin Mabai nodded and opened her math textbook. No, you are here. No comment on her different appearance. His gaze swept over her for less than half a second before drifting away, as though she looked no different in a green dress than she would in a sack. Su Won-on had long stopped hoping for anything else. She might have minded at first, but she was thoroughly used to it now. She had accepted the fact that he looked at her no differently than he looked at books on a shelf. Shin Mabai picked up where they had left off. As he lectured, he drew diagrams on scratch paper, perfectly straight coordinate axes, smooth function curves, with small arrows marking inflection points and extreme value points. After walking through an example problem, he assigned 3 practice questions for her to work on. Then he turned back to his laptop and started typing code again. Su Won-on bent her head over her work. Her shimmery peach-pink nail polish caught the harsh library lamplight, glittering faintly as she flipped pages. She finished the first problem easily, then got stuck on the second. Chewing the end of her pen, she stared hard at the equations scribbled on her scratch sheet. Her pearl necklace slipped down from above her collarbone and swayed gently. Shin Mabai's flying fingers on the keyboard suddenly stilled. His eyes pulled away from the code screen and landed soundlessly on her glittering polished fingernails for 2 seconds. Then they drifted to her delicate choker for another 2 seconds, before resting on her sparkling rhinestone hairpin. He tilted his head slightly, quietly confused. Su Won-on never dressed like this for tutoring sessions. On previous occasions she had worn white dresses, black sweaters and pale, blue shirt, dresses, but nothing quite so bright. Shin Mabai searched for the right word in his mind. Bright? Yes, bright. Her nails sparkled, her hair sparkled, her necklace sparkled. Sitting there, she resembled an expensive ornament displayed in a fancy glass case, glowing all over. Su Won-on, where are you going with your roommates tonight? The boy's flat, even voice rang out abruptly. It was completely unrelated to the math problem she was struggling with. Su Won-on was tugging at her hair trying to solve the equation. Her pen paused sharply on the paper. One of my roommates has a birthday today. She answered without looking up, still writing. We are going for barbecue near campus, then karaoke at K-Mall. We are pulling an all-nighter. We will head back to the dorm to sleep tomorrow morning. Her tone lifted noticeably on the words all-nighter. Then she froze. She jerked her head up, clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Oh my goodness. I completely forgot to get her a birthday present. Thank goodness, I just remembered. I need to order a small cake right away. I can pick it up at the mall before karaoke. She grabbed her phone, opened the app for the chain cake shop inside the mall and started browsing. The cool blue screen lit up her bright face as she frowned, comparing designs, swiping left and right. After scrolling for a long time, she narrowed it down to 2 options. One was a strawberry cream cake, pink frosting decorated with fresh strawberries and tiny white piped flowers, utterly dreamy. The other was a chocolate mousse cake, glossy dark brown surface, dusted with golden cocoa powder, lined with chocolate shards on the sides, and looked incredibly delicious. Su Won-on hesitated for nearly a minute, unable to decide. She leaned naturally closer toward Shin Mabai. The gap between them shrank to mere centimeters. He could catch the faint floral scent of her shampoo, different from the one she had used last time. Had she changed her perfume? It smelled rather nice. She held her phone right up in front of him, almost touching his nose. Shin Mabai, help me choose. Which of these 2 is better? Shin Mabai gave them a quick glance. To him the only real difference was color, one pink, one brown. Both look fine. I have no interest in this sort of thing. I cannot tell which is better. Su Won-on let out a small pulled her phone back, studied the options once more and picked the strawberry one. Since Zhao Xiaodang seemed fonder of pink. That will not do. What are you going to get your girlfriend for her birthday when you have one? Are you just going to skip buying her a cake? She lifted her gaze from the phone and looked up at him through long lashes. Her eyes tilted slightly upward at the corners as she tapped lightly on her screen. A hint of curiosity colored her slow tone. By the way, Shin Mabai, do you have a girlfriend? The boy turned to face her, looking faintly puzzled by how the conversation had jumped from cakes to his love life. He tilted his head a little, brows drawing together softly. No. Why would I need a girlfriend? Dating is troublesome. Being alone works perfectly fine. He spoke with such utter naturalness, as though answering a question like, "Do you want an apple?" No, I do not like apples. They are too much trouble and I get along fine without them. Once again, Su Wanwan cursed him silently inside her head. What an absolute dork. She kept her composure outwardly, though. She looked back down at her phone, tapped firmly to confirm payment for the strawberry cake. She set the phone down with a soft thud and picked her pen back up to finish her exercises. At 3 o'clock, Su Wanwan started packing up. She closed her textbook, slipped scratch paper between its pages, and tucked her pens into the side pocket of her canvas bag. Her chair scraped faintly against the floor as she pushed it back. Shinma Bai was in the middle of writing code. His fingers flew over the keyboard, lines of characters popping up on screen. At the sound of her packing, he did not turn around, yet his keystrokes hesitated for the briefest moment. Be careful at the karaoke venue tonight. Places like that can be chaotic. Call the police right away if anything happens. His tone stayed as flat as when he taught math, as if reciting a well-verified safety rule. Su Wanwan stared at him blankly. She was slinging her bag over her shoulder and froze mid-movement. She had never expected him to volunteer something like this. Not goodbye, not see you Tuesday, not a play, no. A complete sentence showing genuine concern? Granted, he told her to call the police. Most guys would have said, "Call me." Still, Su Wanwan was taken aback. It proved he was looking out for her in his own odd, distinctly Shin-Ma Bai-like way. A bright, joyful grin spread across her face, half surprise and half triumph. Could this dork actually start worrying about her? Suppose I really get into trouble. If I called you, Shin-Ma Bai, would you come help me? Her voice turned sweet and lilting. Hands behind her back, she leaned forward slightly, tilting her head and gazing at him with sparkling eyes. Su Wanwan knew full well how charming she looked in that moment. Shin-Ma Bai lifted his head and frowned at her. His brows drew in and his lips pressed together. He looked at her not as though watching a girl act sweetly, but as if examining a user proposing an inefficient technical solution. Su Wanwan, if you have time to call me, dialing the police would be much faster and more effective. The police can arrive far sooner than I could. Confusion colored every word. He truly could not understand why she would choose a less efficient solution. It was comparable to asking why someone would use an abacus when a calculator was available. He earnestly pointed out how slow and impractical the abacus would be. Su Wanwan felt utterly speechless. Her brilliant smile froze on her face. Her eyes widened and her mouth opened then shut again. A flood of frustrated remarks raced through her mind. Dork, blockhead, log, brain filled with cement. Yet, she had to hold on to her ladylike composure. She could not snap at him, yell, or whack him over the head with her canvas bag. In the end, she could only huff in helpless frustration. Fine. I will not call you. She hauled her bag higher onto her shoulder and turned to leave. Once out of the 5th floor reading room, she stepped into the stairwell. Her footsteps echoed in the confined space. On the 3rd floor, she stopped and rolled her eyes hard at the wall for a full 3 seconds. Shin-Ma Bai was hopelessly, irretrievably obtuse. For a second, she had thought he was finally starting to catch on and care, and then he had launched into a whole lecture about efficiency. Call the police for faster response. Of course, she knew the police would get there faster. That was never the point. What she wanted to know was whether he would come for her. Su Wanwan took a deep breath and kept walking downstairs. Forget him. Tonight, she was going to enjoy herself. She would stop thinking about that bookish dork entirely. She would sing upbeat songs, eat delicious barbecue, and push Shin-Ma Bai, that immovable stone, completely out of her mind. When she reached the library entrance, she pulled out her phone to text Zhou Jing and check if her roommates were setting off. A new WeChat message waited on her screen. It was from Shin-Ma Bai. Wide-eyed, she tapped it open. If the situation is serious, call the police first, then you can call me. I might be able to offer some help, but do not skip calling the police. Emergency calls are free, and police response is free of charge too. Su Wanwan stared at the message for a long while, unsure whether to feel annoyed or amused. It annoyed her that he was still fixated on calling the police. It was as though his brain had replayed their exchange, decided his previous statement lacked nuance, and added conditions and priority notes, and even reminded her the service came at no cost. At the same time, it made her want to laugh. Beneath all that logical efficiency lay his real underlying thought. You can reach out to me. He had wrapped that core message in so many layers of rational analysis that calling him became an afterthought, and phoning the police became the main instruction. Shaking her head, she slipped her phone back into her pocket. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her mouth all the same. What a dork. But a strangely endearing one. The KTV corridor stretched long, dim, lit. From the private rooms on both sides came bursts of singing voices overlapping one another. Some people were belting out Dead I Must Love You, while others sang Little Apple, their mixed tunes bubbling like a boiling pot of porridge. Su Wanwan walked out of the restroom, flicking the undried water off her hands, and headed toward the private room across the carpeted floor. She had drunk some beer with her roommates that night. Her cheeks felt warm, yet her mind stayed clear. She had sung 3 songs just now, her throat was a little hoarse, but she was in high spirits. Zhou Jing had hogged the microphone earlier, and her antics had been hilarious. Zhao Xiaodang had recorded a video, saying she would post it on moments later. She was thinking about going back to order an upbeat song when a figure suddenly rounded the corner. A boy. Tall, dressed in a black leather jacket, his hair styled with hairspray, revealing fine, featured features. The dim corridor light fell over him, sharpening his facial contours, and he wore a handsome, looking smile on his lips. He stepped right in front of her, blocking her path. Su Wanwan halted her steps, instinctively stepping half a step back as she looked up at him. She knew this person. Not from this life, though, from her previous life. Chen Fei, a student from the neighboring elite private school. His family ran a real estate business. Handsome and wealthy, he changed girlfriends faster than Su Wanwan changed phone cases. In her past life, he had chased her too. He would park his fancy sports car at the school gate and wait for her for nearly a month. He sent flowers, handbags, jewelry, and all sorts of things girls liked. His pursuit was loud and well known across campus. She had almost fallen for him, so very close. Thankfully, she had been cautious. She asked around and found out the young master kept every relationship to an exact 30-day cycle, never a day longer. Once the deadline arrived, he would break up without delay. He paid generous breakup compensation but never dragged things out. So she turned him down outright. She had no wish to play dating games with a playboy. What she wanted was never a 1-month-only boyfriend. What do you want? She asked, her tone cool and neutral. Chen Fei looked down at her, grinning broadly to show a neat set of white teeth. He seemed aware of how good-looking his smile was and always opened conversations with it. Sorry for blocking your way, beautiful lady. He slipped one hand into the pocket of his leather jacket, relaxed in his posture. I lost a truth, or dare game with my friends. My dare is to say I like you to the 9th girl coming out of the ladies' restroom. When he said I like you, his voice dropped slightly, the ending of the phrase drawn out. It sounded surprisingly sincere. Paired with his good looks and the dim corridor lighting, an ordinary girl would probably have blushed bright red. Su Wanwan was no ordinary girl, though. She stared at him without the slightest change in expression, even glancing down at her phone screen. All right, go ahead. I'm listening. Say it and I'll leave. I'm in a hurry to get back and sing. Chen Fei was visibly stunned. It seemed his good looks paired with that line had never met such a reaction. Still, he recovered quickly and smiled again. This time curiosity and genuine interest flickered in his expression. I like you, he said, voice low, his gaze fixed straight on her as if acting in a romantic drama. Su Wanwan nodded once she heard it. Got it. Then she stepped sideways past him and walked away without looking back. Her canvas shoes tapped softly across the carpet, her stride steady as she vanished toward the private room door. Suppressed whoops erupted from behind her. Whoa. Chin, you got rejected. Haha, your charm failed you, man. Who's that girl? So cold, wouldn't even spare you a glance. Chen Fei stood in the middle of the corridor, one hand still in his jacket pocket, gazing toward where Su Wanwan had disappeared. His eyes lit up. He pulled his other hand out of his pocket, stroked his chin and smiled. Interesting. When they left the KTV, dawn was breaking. Su Wanwan followed behind her roommates, walking with heavy steps toward the dormitory building. Zhou Jing's voice was hoarse, yet she still hummed the unfinished song, completely off-key. Zhao Xiaodang was so sleepy she could barely keep her eyes open, leaning heavily against Zhou Jing's arm like a boneless human pendant. Another roommate, Li Ming, fared slightly better, but kept yawning non-stop. If I pull an all-nighter again, I'm a dog, Zhao Xiaodang mumbled sleepily. You said the exact same thing last time, Zhou Jing replied in a hoarse voice. That didn't count. I mean it this time. Su Won walked at the back, smiling as she listened to their bickering. She was tired, yet her spirits held up. She had sung many songs that night, eaten 2 fruit platters and a cake, drunk 3 cups of beer, and even bought a mouse at a brand name store in the mall. All in all, it had been a very fulfilling night. Back at the dorm, the 4 of them took turns showering. Su Won went last. Hot water washed off the smoke and alcohol smell clinging to her from the KTV. Weariness crashed over her. She fell asleep almost the second her head hit the pillow. Then she started dreaming. In the dream, she stood inside a large office. Floor, 2 ceiling windows, leather sofas, a mahogany desk. On the desk sat a transparent glass of water, its surface perfectly still. She knew this office. This was the office of the man she had worked for right after graduation in her previous life, the Devil's office. Su Won never wanted to set foot in this room again, yet the dream paid no heed to her wishes. The door clicked shut behind her. She saw herself sitting on the sofa, wearing the white blouse she had bought for her first job, holding that glass of water. A blurry figure sat behind the desk, his face hidden in shadow, only the curve of his mouth clear. "Drink some water first." She screamed internally in the dream, begging her past self not to drink. But the young, naive, fresh, graduate version of herself on the sofa could not hear. She lifted the glass and took an unguarded sip. The world spun wildly. The scene shattered like a cracked mirror. Fragmented flashes of memory flickered past, pain on the sofa, blood on her legs, the man grinning wickedly as he held up his phone. "I recorded videos, I took photos. If you call the police, I'll send them everywhere." The Devil's voice echoed as if coming from underwater. Then came a WeChat notification tone. She saw a video pop up on her phone screen, footage of her, shameful and humiliating. She watched her past self collapse onto the floor and hurl her phone away. The scene broke apart again. When it reformed, she was in a small clinic. Harsh pale lighting, peeling wall paint, sharp disinfectant hanging in the air. She lay on an operating table. The overhead fluorescent lamp flickered on and off. A man in a white coat shook his head. His lips moved, and his words reached her after a delay. "I'm sorry, severe hemorrhage, it will be very difficult for you to conceive in the future." Then came images of what she had become later. Trapped in a cheap rental flat with curtains drawn tight day and night. Takeout boxes piled by the door. Her hair greasy against her scalp, her body emaciated. She would tremble at the sight of strangers. Even a phone notification would make her flinch. The bright, striking campus beauty everyone had admired had turned into someone afraid to step outside, afraid to interact with others. The long nightmare ended. Su Won opened her eyes. White dorm ceiling. She was back in her university dorm. Her pillow was soaked, tears streaming down her temples into her hair. She pulled the quilt over her head, curled into a ball, biting the back of her hand to muffle her sobs. Her roommates still slept. The dorm was quiet, only the occasional turn from Zhao shouting and distant footsteps from the hallway. She cried for a good while before calming down. When her emotions steadied, she fished out her phone from under her pillow to check the time. A WeChat message waited on the screen. From Shinma Bai. Sent at 12 noon. It was nearly 1 in the afternoon now. "Back at the dorm? Is everything all right?" Su Won stared at those words for a long time, long enough to count every character. 4 characters for "back at the dorm." 6 characters for "is everything all right?" Plus 2 question marks. 10 characters and 2 punctuation marks in total. No emojis, no extra remarks, not even "why didn't you reply?" Yet he was the first person in a long time to ask whether she was okay. Su Won pressed the phone against her chest, its screen resting over her heart. Her heart raced, stirred partly by the nightmare and partly by something else. She stared at Shinma Bai's profile picture, and a clear thought took root in her mind once more. In this life, she absolutely had to win over this bookish boy. She had gotten a second chance at life. She knew who this future powerful figure would become. She could not afford to mess things up again. He might be socially awkward and not very perceptive, but he was kind and honest. Why had she never noticed that in her past life? In this life, she saw it plainly. A fleeting thought crossed her mind. What if he was just good on his own merits, even without his future status and wealth? She never dreamed of becoming a rich man's wife. All she wanted was a safe, comfortable life. This soft thought lingered for barely a second. She shook her head, wiped her tear-stained cheeks with the back of her wet hand, and pushed the wandering thought away. Su Won, stop overthinking. Focus on winning him over first. Pulling herself together, she typed a reply, I'm back. I slept and just woke up. Nothing happened last night, I had lots of fun. He replied quickly this time, within 3 minutes. Oh. Just one word. No, that's good. No, did you sleep well? No, why did you take so long to reply? Just oh. Soo-won stared at the single character and almost laughed. This was classic Shin Mo-bai. If he had replied with that's good, rest well, she would have suspected his account had been hacked. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, and sent another message. Does that count as you caring about me? He replied instantly this time. Is that caring? I was just worried something bad might happen to you. Don't go out late at night in future. Places like that are chaotic. Reading his reply, Soo-won's eyes stung again. She had cried so hard already, thinking she had no tears left. Yet those few lines stirred fresh warmth behind her eyes. He did not write, I'm worried about you. He wrote, I was just worried something bad might happen to you. In his logical mind, caring was a vague, undefined concept he struggled to label. But worried something bad might happen to you was a plain fact. He truly had wondered whether she had gotten back safely, truly feared she might run into trouble. To him, it was not caring. It was simply stating what he felt. Soo-won sent a cat, nodding emoji to show she understood. Shin Mo-bai did not reply further. She did not dwell on it. She set down her phone, climbed out of bed, and washed her face in the bathroom. Cold water washed away the salt of her tears and the lingering terror from her dream. In the mirror, her eyes and nose were red, her hair messy, her appearance disheveled. Yet her gaze was nothing like the broken woman trapped in that rental flat in her dream. Back at her desk, she pulled out snacks to quiet her growling stomach. Crispy chips crunched between her teeth. The chocolate-flavored energy bar was overly sweet, pairing nicely with cold milk. Halfway through eating, she paused, wiped chip crumbs from the corner of her mouth with her sleeve, and opened her phone notes. Under her pursuit plan document, she typed a new line. He asked if I got back to the dorm. Said he worried something bad might happen to me. He really is such a good person, good enough to make me cry. She read the line for a moment, locked her phone, and kept eating chips. On Tuesday afternoon, Soo-won arrived at the library half an hour early for their appointment. Shin Mo-bai had not shown up yet. She set her canvas bag down at their usual spot and sat down. She placed a white cardboard box from a digital goods store on the table, printed with a peripheral, brand logo, and tied with a pretty bow. She had bought it at the digital mall in K Mall on Saturday night. While her roommates dozed on the KTV sofas at 3 in the morning, she had slipped downstairs to browse the still open shops. She knew nothing about computer mice. The shop assistant had asked who the gift was for, and she told him it was for a computer science major boy. The assistant had recommended this model immediately, saying it had high DPI, fast response, suited programming, and was comfortable for long-hour use. Soo-won barely understood what DPI meant, yet good for programming and comfortable to hold were selling points enough. It cost more than 200 yuan. Not exorbitant, but a significant expense for a student living on 800 yuan monthly allowance. She bit the bullet and paid, hid the box inside her canvas bag, and returned to the KTV sofa before her roommates woke up. Her thoughts drifted until Shin Mo-bai pulled her back to reality 10 minutes later. He set his laptop bag on the table and sat down. His gaze flickered briefly over the gift box before he looked away. He opened his advanced mathematics textbook. Today we will cover. Soo-won smiled and pushed the box toward him, cutting him off. This is for you. Shin Mo-bai glanced at the box, then back up at her, clearly confused. Why? Thank you gift. Soo-won rested her chin in her hands, eyes sparkling. I saw it at K Mall Digital Mall on Saturday. I don't know much about these things, but the shop assistant said this model is good and popular among boys. Do you like it? You refused my dinner treat and don't like apples. Surely you like a mouse? You've helped me so many times, I've never properly thanked you. He frowned and untied the bow without hesitation. Soo-won silently mourned the ruined ribbon for half a second. In that brief moment, he had taken the mouse out, twisted it in his hands, tested the buttons, and read the specification label on the bottom. Don't buy me things in future. This brand is quite pricey. A mouse only needs to work, there is no need to waste money. His voice and expression stayed neutral. Soo-won pouted. Yes, it was expensive. I bought it with my saved living expenses. After buying this, I might not have enough money for food this month. Shin Mo-bai's hand holding the mouse froze. Spotting that pause, she delivered her carefully, rehearsed line, tone light with a hint of soft pleading. How about this? Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we eat dinner together in the school cafeteria before coming to the library for tutoring. You pay for my meals for a month, and I will pay you back once I have more money next month. Or I can save up and return the money for 1 month's worth of meals to you. Her eyes shone bright, her voice soft, every gesture radiating a gentle, vulnerable charm. Shin Mobai stared at her, his expression complicated, as if he wanted to argue yet saw little point. He sighed softly, slipped the mouse into the side pocket of his laptop bag, sounding resigned. Fine. Don't waste money buying me gifts again. In the end, it will still end up costing me money. Su Wanwan, I really don't know what to say about the way you give presents. Su Wanwan's face lit up as if she had won the lottery. It's settled then. Let's start the lesson, Teacher Shin. She winked playfully. Shin Mobai opened the textbook and began explaining derivative applications. Su Wanwan took notes obediently, a smile never leaving her lips. At 5:30 on Thursday, the two ate together for the first time at the school's busiest #1 canteen. Located close to teaching buildings and dormitories, it served tasty, affordable food and was packed with students at mealtimes. Su Wanwan wandered past the food counters with Shin Mobai, finally picking sweet and sour pork ribs, garlic broccoli, and rice. Shin Mobai's tray held only beef and potato stew, rice, plus a free cup of boiled water. Su Wanwan glanced at his tray. That's all you're eating? Even less than me? It's enough. Hardly. You code every day, your brain burns so much energy. You need more protein. Watch out for premature balding. She used her unused chopsticks to transfer 2 pieces of sweet and sour pork ribs onto his plate. Shin Mobai looked at the newly added meat and frowned. You eat them yourself. I'm on a diet. You are not overweight. Su Wanwan's chopsticks hung mid-air. She lifted her eyes toward him, expectant. Usually when a boy said, you are not overweight, he would add something like, you are slim, or you have a nice figure. But Shin Mobai finished his 3-word comment and went back to eating, simply stating an objective fact without any romantic subtext. She shot him a silent glare, picked up a rib, and bit into it, chewing firmly. From that day onward, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday before library tutoring, they would meet at 5:30 for dinner in the cafeteria. As this happened repeatedly, people began to take notice on the school forum. The forum post had a straightforward title, Is Su Wanwan, the beauty of the foreign languages department, seeing someone? She's been eating in the cafeteria with the same guy lately. The forum post came with a blurry candid photo. Su Wanwan sat on one side of the table, and across from her was a boy in a plaid shirt, head bowed as he ate hungrily. Most of his side profile was hidden behind an unfashionable pair of black-rimmed glasses. Within moments, the replies stretched to nearly 100 comments. OP, haven't you ever seen men and women eat together? Sharing a meal automatically means they're dating. To the person above, the thing is she keeps meeting the same guy at the same time, several times a week. I've spotted them 3 times in the first canteen just this week. Who's that guy anyway? He looks really ordinary, like his clothes came from a street stall. You don't get it. He's from the class of 2014 Computer Science Department. I think his name is Shin Mobai. He's top of his year, really low-key, but honestly, he doesn't look impressive at all. He and the gorgeous Su Wanwan seem like they're from completely different worlds. No way. What kind of boyfriend would only take his girlfriend to the campus cafeteria all the time? Especially someone as stunning as Su Wanwan. This guy seems so cheap. How could she like him? Exactly. They're probably childhood friends or relatives. The goddess is definitely still single. Stop spreading rumors. The post stayed on the forum homepage for 2 days before sinking out of sight. No one managed to take any more revealing photos. And the pair looked so mismatched appearance. Why is that nobody took the thread seriously? Su Wanwan's roommates had also seen the post. Zhao Xiaodong held up her phone in the dorm and read out several comments. When she reached the line saying he seems so cheap, she couldn't hold back her laughter. She leaned over toward Su Wanwan. So who really is that guy? He looks plain, not handsome at all, and doesn't seem to have money. Wanwan, why do you keep eating meals with him? Su Wanwan was busy painting her fingernails and didn't lift her head, her tone utterly relaxed. He's my tutor. He's really nice and helps me with advanced mathematics regularly. Your tutor? Zhao Xiaodong blinked. That top student from computer science? MHM. He's the #1 in his grade and has tutored me for free so many times. It's only fair I treat him to a few meals. Don't jump to conclusions. That makes sense. Zhao Xiaodong set her phone down, then added another thought. Still, he doesn't look like much. You two really don't match when you stand together. Zhou Jing poked her head out from the upper bunk. Wan, what's your taste? Any of the guys chasing you is better than him. Remember that athlete from the physical education department? Good, looking and wealthy, yet you won't even give him the time of day. Su Wanon pulled the nail polish brush out of the bottle, held it up to check the color in the light, and blew gently on her nails. A faint, unreadable smile tugged at her lips. You wouldn't understand. Understand what? Nothing. It's not what you're thinking anyway. She refused to elaborate, so the others didn't press her. Everyone on campus knew Su Wanwan had always had high standards. Countless boys pursued her, yet none had succeeded in winning her heart. It would be nothing short of unbelievable if she ever took a fancy to an ordinary science student like him. No one imagined that the beautiful, delicate Su Wanwan could share any special connection with a simple young man who wore plaid shirts, ate every meal in the campus cafeteria, and carried an old phone with a cracked screen. And so, no one gave the matter a second thought. What nobody knew, however, was that Su Wanwan's mind was occupied by something entirely unrelated to the forum discussion. The cafeteria was packed that evening. The queue for food stretched all the way to the entrance. The air smelled of braised pork and stir-fried greens, filled with the clink of tableware and constant chatter. Su Wanwan and Shin Mabai sat across from each other in a corner by the window. She had ordered shredded pork with fish sauce and stir-fried bean sprouts. Shin Mobai's tray held braised beef with potatoes, rice, and a cup of free boiled water, as usual. I followed a content creator online recently who owns a famous internet cat called Nyan. It's an orange tabby, round and incredibly cute. Su Wanwan picked up a chopstick full of bean sprouts, her eyes sparkling as she gestured excitedly. Whenever Nyan hears the sound of a can opening, it rolls right off the sofa, literally rolls over and tumbles down, then trots over as fast as it can. Its owner runs an account for it with millions of followers. I hit follow. Once I start working, I want a cat too, a chubby orange tabby. It can curl up on my lap in winter and lie under the air conditioner in summer. The girl loved talking, able to ramble animatedly all by herself, gesturing to show just how plump the cat was. Shin Mabai ate quietly, occasionally humming a short response. Su Wanwan was used to this lackluster reaction and didn't mind. She continued to talk about how clever the cat was, how it loved to act spoiled, and how it once got stuck inside a cardboard box and couldn't get out. Just as she described how Nyan knocked over a vase and got made to stand in the corner as punishment, Shin Mabai suddenly spoke. Su Wanwan, will you stay in the city after graduation? The chopsticks froze halfway to her mouth. The question came completely out of the blue. It had nothing to do with the cat, nothing to do with anything she had just been talking about. A piece of bean sprout dangled from the tip of her chopsticks, suspended between her bowl and her lips. Her heartbeat quickened without warning. But she was Su Wanwan. In less than a second, she composed her expression. She popped the bean sprout into her mouth, chewed slowly, and smiled as she asked, "Why bring that up all of a sudden?" Shin Mabai picked up a chunk of potato and ate it, chewing slowly, his tone casual. "Just curious. You're from the South, right? Southern students usually go home after graduation instead of staying. What about you? Will you head back?" He didn't look at her as he spoke. His gaze rested on his dinner tray, as if pondering the cooking technique behind the braised beef and potatoes. His tone was identical to when he asked, "Have you finished this problem?" Calm, straightforward, carrying no extra emotion. Without waiting for her answer, he lowered his head and took a couple mouthfuls of rice, as if the conversation was already over. Su Wanwan waited silently for 10 seconds. Over those 10 seconds, he ate a spoonful of rice, picked up another piece of beef, drank some water, and glanced up at the television mounted on the cafeteria ceiling. The midday financial news was playing, and the anchor was reporting that a tech firm's valuation had exceeded 100 billion. His gaze lingered on the screen for barely 2 seconds before shifting back down to his food. He said nothing more. Just curious. That single phrase was all the explanation she got. No follow-up. "No, I want to know your plans." "No, I'm sorting out my own future." Just casual curiosity. Su Wanwan lowered her head and stuffed another bean sprout into her mouth, chewing hard. "Idiot." She scolded him silently inside her head. Even so, she could feel the corners of her mouth fighting to lift into a smile. She prodded the rice in her bowl with her chopsticks, trying to look focused on eating, yet the smile refused to fade. When a boy asks a girl whether she will remain in the same city after graduation, anyone would interpret it as him considering a shared future. Shin Ma-bai was probably completely oblivious to the underlying ambiguity. With his way of thinking, he might genuinely be running a statistical analysis in his mind, building a regression model using hometown and major as variables to calculate the probability of graduates staying local and simply collecting sample data. Still, he had asked the question out loud. Su Won picked at her bean sprouts one by one, chewing steadily. She looked past her tray at Shin Ma-bai, who remained absorbed by his braised beef and potatoes. He neatly cut the potato chunks into smaller pieces and ate them methodically. He had no idea what wild thoughts were swirling through the girl sitting opposite him. She mentally filed his question away in a special folder in her memory. That folder already held several other lines he'd said, including, "I suppose it counts as concern. I just worry something might happen to you." Now there was a new entry. She wondered how long it would take before he went through that folder himself and finally realized how easily his words could be misinterpreted. But she was patient. She could wait. "It depends," she suddenly replied to his earlier question. Shin Ma-bai lifted his head. "Depends on what?" Su Won took a bite of shredded pork with fish sauce and smiled. "It depends on whether there are things or people worth staying for. My family doesn't have much money. If I can find a suitable job here, or if there's someone I care about, I could stay. If not, I'll leave." Her tone sounded light, almost joking, as if she was merely talking about job opportunities or the weather. Yet her eyes held his firmly through his black-rimmed glasses, watching carefully for any special reaction. Shin Ma-bai nodded, as if noting down an insignificant piece of information. Then he returned to his meal and ate the last piece of beef. No follow-up questions. No visible reaction. No blush. Su Won rolled her eyes inwardly. Just as I thought. Iron trees never bloom, and this fool will never wake up to subtle hints. She finished the rest of her rice, stood up, and carried her tray to the waste collection counter. Shin Ma-bai followed behind her, set his tray down, and headed toward the library. Su Won walked after him, staring at his back in the dark blue plaid shirt. His canvas shoes tapped steadily against the stone pavement. She quickened her pace to catch up and walked alongside him. "Shin Ma-bai, what about you? Will you stay here in the future?" She didn't look at him as she asked, staring straight ahead, sounding casually inquisitive. Shin Ma-bai walked a few steps before answering. "Haven't I told you? My family lives here already. Staying isn't really a choice I need to make." He glanced at her briefly, then turned his gaze back to the path ahead. Su Won's footsteps faltered for half a heartbeat. She recovered immediately and kept walking, not pressing him further. The fifth floor of the library was quiet, as usual on Thursday evening. Su Won struggled with an applied derivative problem. She bit the end of her pen, her scratch paper covered in equations. She got stuck at the third step and frowned at her work. Beside her, Shin Ma-bai typed code, the steady tapping of his keyboard contrasting sharply with her silent uncertainty. All at once, he stopped typing, let out a quiet sigh, and began explaining the problem to her. Shin Ma-bai, a moderately loud female voice suddenly came from behind them, breaking the hush of the study area. Su Won looked up and saw a girl standing beside their table. She wore black, rimmed glasses similar to Shin Ma-bai's, plain features, and a dark gray hoodie, holding a folder against her chest. Su Won swept a glance over her. She didn't recognize her, but she instinctively noticed the way the girl looked at Shin Ma-bai. It was far from the gaze of an ordinary classmate seeking academic discussion. Su Won recognized that look well. She had seen it countless times in her own reflection. A small crease formed between her brows. "Who is this?" Shin Ma-bai did not respond right away. He merely glanced at the newcomer, then finished walking Su Won through the solution. "So you differentiate the function here, set the derivative equal to 0, and the solutions are critical points. Try working it out again. If you still can't solve it, call me instead of sitting there biting your pen." He slid the scratch paper toward her, then turned to nod at the girl. "Zhou Min. It's getting late. What do you need?" The girl named Zhou Min quickly pulled out the chair next to Shin Ma-bai, sat down, and opened her folder to bring up an academic topic. Something about algorithm optimization, time complexity, trading space for time. Su Won couldn't understand a single word. She could only hear Zhou Min speaking rapidly and earnestly, as if engaged in an intellectual contest only the two of them could join. Shin Mabai's replies were short, each fewer than 15 words. His tone was as flat as when he tutored her, yet somehow different. When teaching her, he broke basic concepts down step by step. With Zhou Min, he exchanged streams of technical jargon she could not comprehend. Su Wanwan pretended to work on her exercises, but her ears pricked up. Her pen moved mechanically across the paper, scribbling meaningless marks. This girl's feelings for Shin Mabai are obvious. Zhou Min definitely has a crush on him. It was more than simple admiration for a top student. There was something special in her eyes when she looked at him. Su Wanwan knew that expression all too well. She practiced that exact look in the mirror every day. Still, she reassured herself. She finally recalled who Zhou Min was. In her past life, Zhou Min was merely one of Shin Mabai's subordinates. Not his girlfriend, not someone he was romantically involved with, just a minor supporting character. She posed no real threat. Just as that thought crossed her mind, Zhou Min reached the end of their technical discussion, yet showed no sign of leaving. She closed her folder and shifted her gaze past Shin Mabai to land on Su Wanwan. Her stare felt like a dull blade. Not sharply cutting, but heavy and uncomfortable. She looked Su Wanwan over from head to toe, her face, the scratch paper spread before her, the pen gripped in her hand. "You are. Why do you still need tutoring even in university?" Zhou Min's voice was soft, yet every syllable carried deliberate sharpness. A stiff movement of her mouth passed for a smile. "Are you some relative of Shin Mabai's?" Su Wanwan's fingers tightened around her pen. She did not answer immediately, nor did she look at Zhou Min. Instead, she turned to Shin Mabai. She carefully let her eyes grow visibly watery, gently bit her lower lip, lowered her eyelashes, and hunched her shoulders slightly. She looked just like a helpless kitten struck for no reason. Su Wanwan had practiced this expression at least 20 times in front of the mirror, perfecting every detail, the angle of her face, the slump of her shoulders, the precise amount of glistening moisture in her eyes. She knew from what she remembered that Shin Mabai was easily swayed by vulnerable-looking girls. In her past life, he had felt sorry for his future wife and taken responsibility for her. Sure enough, Shin Mabai glanced at her. Then he turned back toward Zhou Min, his tone marginally colder than it had been during their technical talk. "Her foundation in advanced mathematics is weak. I offered to tutor her from the basics." He paused briefly. "She isn't my relative. Is there an issue? Who said only family members can receive tutoring?" Zhou Min's expression shifted. It was less embarrassment from being contradicted and more quiet disappointment as a suspicion was confirmed. She adjusted her glasses and swallowed hard. "No problem." She closed her folder and stood up briskly, walking away faster than she had arrived. As she passed Su Wanwan, Zhou Min paused and shot another look down at her. There was more than disdain in that glance. Su Wanwan struggled to decipher the rest. Envy? Confusion? She could not fully read Zhou Min's intentions. One thing was certain, though. Zhou Min was interested in Shin Mabai. Once Zhou Min's figure vanished completely, Su Wanwan tapped her pen lightly on the desk. "Shin Mabai, who is she?" She turned toward him, obvious frustration in her voice. This time she was not acting. Zhou Min's dismissive stare had genuinely annoyed her. "She came over out of nowhere to interrupt our tutoring, and she spoke so rudely. Did you see how she glared at me before leaving? She looked down on me. She acted like I was completely hopeless just because I need tutoring. I never asked her for help, so why is she so judgmental?" Her voice rose little by little, cheeks puffing out like a deflated balloon. Shin Mabai listened silently to her entire complaint, his expression unchanged the whole time, like a computer waiting for input to finish. Eventually, he spoke. "Her name is Zhou Min. She's in my class, and she's very good at advanced mathematics, second highest in our grade." He hesitated for a moment, seemingly choosing his next words carefully. "You might indeed be a little less quick-witted than her." Su Wanwan's eyes widened. Her mouth opened and shut again, like a fish pulled out of water. "But she wasn't looking down on you," Shin Mabai continued, his tone as matter of fact as when explaining limit definitions. "She probably just can't grasp how basic your foundation really is." The moment the second lacking left his lips, Su Wanwan felt like her skull was about to blow a fuse from sheer irritation. First he called her slow, then said her foundations were lacking. Those two phrases crushed the last shred of her self-esteem. What made it worse was that Shin Mabai wore no trace of malice as he spoke. There was even a hint of sincerity on his face. He truly believed he was analyzing her situation, genuinely thinking his explanation would make her feel better. The thing that pushed Su Wanwan to the brink was that she could not even argue back. Everything he said was the truth. Her advanced mathematics foundations really were weak, and she really did not pick things up as quickly as Zhou Min. Yet hearing those facts come out of his mouth felt like being pelted with bricks, leaving her dazed. She could not shout at him. She could not hit him. She could not even stand up and storm off. Her plan to get close to Shin Mabai could not afford for her to lose her temper right now. So she settled on the only option she had at that moment. Su Wanwan buried her face in her arms and slumped over the desk, staying perfectly still. Her shoulders rose and fell slightly, and she breathed a little heavier on purpose, as if she was struggling to hold back tears. One arm shielded her face, while her other hand secretly pinched her thigh under the table. The sharp pain nearly made her cry for real, and tears finally welled up in her eyes. Unexpectedly, Shin Mabai made no move to comfort her. Instead, he simply turned back and resumed coding. The clatter of keyboard keys started up. Clack, 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 a steady rhythm just like a server running nonstop. Su Wanwan stayed slumped over for nearly 2 minutes, hearing nothing but the tapping keys. Her anger flared up all over again. Come on. She was already pretending to cry and ignoring him, yet he still had the focus to type code? Could he not see that she was upset? Maybe she ought to just straighten up. Was it worth getting worked up over this blockhead? Just as Su Wanwan began wondering whether she should find a way to end the act, the keyboard fell silent. Su Wanwan, sit up and work on the problems. Shin Mobai's voice came from above her head, as calm as it always was. No remorse, no anxiety, no sign he was second, guessing his earlier words. He was merely concerned that her slumping posture would hold up their tutoring session. Su Wanwan did not move. If your foundations are lacking, you can improve them with practice. Besides, you studied liberal arts, so there is no need to compare yourself to her. You barely know each other. Why care what she thinks? The young man paused, seemingly searching for another reasonable point to add. If we are going to compare, her foreign language grades are not as good as yours. It works both ways. Su Wanwan finally lifted her head. Her eyes were red, tears teetering on the verge of spilling over. Her nose was flushed, and paired with her ballerina bun, she looked just like a kitten caught out in the rain. The girl glared at him. Her gaze held a jumble of hurt and anger, along with a flicker of emotion she refused to name as gratitude. His last remark had been casually delivered, yet what he meant was, you have strengths she does not. Shin Mabai, don't say I'm slower than others. Her voice trembled with suppressed tears, but she kept her tone low, making it sound almost like a playful complaint. I'm smart. I just struggle with math. I chose liberal arts for the college entrance exam. Naturally, I can't compete with you science students. She leaned forward slightly as she spoke, tilting her face up toward him. Su Wanwan had no idea that hunching over earlier had left a stray lock of hair sticking straight up beside her bun. That wisp stood upright, swaying gently with every word she uttered. Shin Mabai stared at her. To be precise, his gaze locked onto that stray lock of hair on top of her head. He studied it for a full 2 seconds. Then he let out a quiet sigh. Fine. You're smart. You just aren't good at math. Su Wanwan was about to nod in satisfaction when he spoke again, his tone maddeningly blunt. Su Wanwan, a strand of your hair is sticking up. It makes you look distracted and unfocused, not smart at all. Fix it quickly. Su Wanwan froze in shock. All her hurt, anger, and carefully staged crying act vanished the second she heard that comment. She instantly pulled out her phone, opened the front camera, and frantically tried to smooth down her hair. On the screen, her eyes and nose were still red, and that stray hair jutted out next to her bun like a broken antenna. With her tear-streaked expression, she really did look rather flustered. Stunned, she pressed down hard twice, with no success. She dampened her fingertips and tried again to flatten it. Shin Mabai did not rush her. He leaned back comfortably in his chair, resting his chin in his hand and watching her flustered efforts. He looked completely relaxed. There was the faintest hint of a smile on his lips, one that never fully formed before fading away. After a struggle, Su Wanwan finally tamed the stray hair. She tilted her phone this way and that, checking that every strand stayed in place before setting the device down with a sigh of relief. The moment she put her phone away, Shin Mabai spoke once more. Even though your foundations need work, you aren't slow if you can grasp concepts after 3 explanations. He spoke in the same measured tone he used when walking her through calculus problems, simply stating an objective observation. Su Wanwan blinked in surprise. She turned to look at him and saw him tapping the tip of his pen against the scratch paper, as if sorting out his next thought. What's more, explaining problems to you helps me retain ideas and organize my logic better than studying alone. As he finished, he tapped the pen lightly against the paper, as if marking a full stop at the end of his sentence. Su Wanwan was thoroughly stunned, her beautiful eyes widening. What do you mean? I haven't analyzed it yet. He handed her the pen, his tone flat. When I study by myself, I never stop to ask why. You always do. After dropping that vague statement, he bent his head and resumed coding. The clack of the keyboard started up again, steady as ever, as if his earlier words had been nothing more than a casual answer to a classroom question. Su Wanwan gripped her pen and stared at the scratch paper. Had she heard him correctly? Shin Mabai had not directly praised her, nor said anything resembling a confession, yet what he had just said left her confused. What was he trying to tell her? She dared not let her imagination run wild, yet her heartbeat quickened all the same. She stole a glance upward. The young man's gaze was fixed on his screen, his face impassive, fingers flying across the keyboard. He clearly had no idea how suggestive and thought-provoking his words had been. She lowered her head and tightened her hold on the pen. She wrote a single solution on the paper and then froze. She wanted to call him a blockhead. Somehow, she could not bring herself to do it this time. What could she reproach him for? For being overly earnest? For lacking the knack to soothe her when she pretended to be upset, yet after riling her up, sincerely telling her, "You are not slow. Working through problems with you helps me think more clearly than studying alone." Did that mean he did not see her as a burden? Shin Mabai did not know how to coax people. He only spoke the truth. Yet his honest words made her heart race faster than any sweet compliment ever could. "All right, it's getting late. Stop being upset and work on the problems," he said calmly. The young man looked at her, oblivious to her racing thoughts. He had no clue he had just said something that would occupy her mind for days. Su Wanwan silently cursed him over and over, yet she lowered her head and got to work. Still, she kept trying and failing to hold back her smile, until she finally gave up and let it show. Near the end of their Thursday tutoring session, Su Wanwan asked if Shin Mabai would go to the bookstore with her that weekend to buy advanced mathematics reference books. Why go to a physical bookstore? Place an order online. It arrives tomorrow and you can save 2 hours of travel time. Shin Mabai remained seated at their usual library table, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He glanced up at her, brows slightly furrowed, as if evaluating an inefficient plan. Su Wanwan leaned forward, resting both palms on the table. She stared at him with wide eyes and slightly parted lips. "You can't flip through the books online. What if I buy one that is either too difficult or too basic? That would be a waste of money, and I don't have much allowance." She emphasized the last sentence. Then she fell silent, standing in front of him with her arms crossed, cheeks puffed out, staring at him without blinking. She looked just like a kitten waiting for treats, sending a clear message, "Please come with me." Shin Mabai looked at her once. Then again. "Very well." He relented in the end. Su Wanwan instantly brightened. She pressed her hands together. "It's settled then. 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Meet at the bus stop outside the school gate." Shin Mabai hummed in acknowledgement and returned to his coding. He would never admit that her puffed cheek expression had tugged at a quiet spot inside him that he could not explain. On Saturday afternoon, the two arrived punctually at the school bus stop. Shin Mabai wore his usual plaid shirt, a light blue one today, with every cuff button neatly fastened. Su Wanwan was dressed in an off-white hoodie, jeans, and canvas shoes, her hair tied in a loose ponytail. She looked fresh and relaxed. The bus arrived soon after. It was not packed, but there were no empty seats. They stood side by side in the middle aisle, each gripping a metal handrail. Su Wanwan stood next to the window, Shin Mabai beside her. One hand held the rail, and he still carried his laptop bag in the other. "Shin Mabai, can you take a break from coding for once? Why bring your laptop even when we leave campus?" Su Wanwan shot an exasperated look at his bag. "I haven't finished today's tasks." "What tasks?" "Optimizing a natural language processing model." Su Wanwan did not understand the terminology, but she nodded, feigning comprehension. After spending so much time together, she had grown accustomed to the technical terms Shin Mabai occasionally used. He was not trying to hold an in-depth discussion, he was simply answering her question. Halfway through the ride, the bus passed a stretch of bumpy road. The vehicle jolted several times before the driver slammed on the brakes. Su Wanwan lost her grip on the rail and lurched forward. She instinctively reached out to grab something, but her fingers closed around thin air. Her balance slipped completely. She barely had time to register what was happening, one panicked thought flashing through her mind: I'm going to fall. Luckily, an arm caught her around the waist. The grip was firm yet gentle, steady and precise as it pulled her backward. The girl's back collided with a solid chest. Even through their outer layers, she could feel the strength of his arm, like a safety protocol instantly activated, executed swiftly and accurately. The bus came to a stop. The momentum faded. Su Wanwan regained her footing. Shin Mobai's arm lingered at her waist for roughly half a second before he pulled it away so quickly it was almost as if the moment had never happened. Can you stand steadily? His calm voice drifted down from above, identical to the tone he used when asking whether she had finished her exercises. Su Wanwan took a slow breath, striving to sound completely normal. I'm fine. Thank you. She turned to grip the handrail again, facing the window. The glass reflected his silhouette behind her. He had repositioned his hand on the rail, slung his laptop bag higher on his shoulder, and turned to gaze outside. Yet, Su Wanwan caught a small detail in the reflection. The tips of Shin Mobai's ears had turned pink. It was not his entire ear, just a blush spreading upward from the earlobe, stark against his fair skin. It looked as if someone had brushed pink watercolor along his ear, the color seeping upward slowly. Her fingers tightened around the metal rail until her knuckles whitened. Su Wanwan stared straight ahead, pushing down a rising smile. So his ears betrayed him. He got flustered so easily. How adorable. The bus rolled onward, its engine drowning out all other noise. They stood beside each other, facing different directions, neither speaking. Still, Su Wanwan could feel it clearly. A faint warmth lingered on her back where his arm had circled her, as if the outline of his arm had been temporarily pressed into her hoodie. Then a thought struck her. Her heart had skipped a beat just now. It was not only because he had steadied her, nor because her plan to grow closer to him had moved forward. Her heart had raced on its own. A pure, instinctive physical reaction. Long before her mind could process the moment, her body had already responded. She silently questioned herself, am I reacting this way because he will become an influential figure in the future, or simply because he is Shin Mabai? Su Wanwan watched the trees along the road receding outside the window. The question hung in her mind like a stone tossed into a pond, ripples spreading endlessly. The bus reached their stop soon afterward. The doors slid open, and a gust of cold wind washed over her face. She drew in a deep breath, forcing all those tangled thoughts aside. Stay focused, Su Wanwan. Stop overthinking. Keep working to get closer to him first. She shook her head and followed Shin Mabai off the bus. The bookstore occupied the second floor of the shopping mall. It was fairly large and not crowded on the weekend afternoon. In the corner of the music section, a girl sat playing the guitar, the melody soft and slow. They walked past the bestseller shelves, rounded a display of self-improvement books, and reached the textbook section at the back. Shin Mabai stopped before the bookshelves, his eyes scanning the rows of colorful book spines like a computer processing data. He quickly pulled 3 books from the shelf and flipped through them. He glanced at the table of contents of the first one and set it back. He compared the exercise sections of the second and closed it as well. He kept the 3rd book and held it out to Su Wanwan. This one suits you best. Su Wanwan took it. It was a complete solution guide for advanced mathematics, with a classic dark blue cover printed with white lettering. The thick volume felt heavy in her hands. How do you know this one is right for me? The table of contents covers all your weak points, and the difficulty of the exercises increases gradually. Every problem comes with a detailed walkthrough. The other 2 are either too basic or far too advanced for your current level. He spoke in the same efficient, precise tone he used when drawing up study plans in the library, no unnecessary words. Evaluating a book came as naturally to him as reviewing lines of code. Input: Su Wanwan's math level. Output: optimal reference book recommendation. He resembled an AI study companion, his voice almost devoid of human emotion. Su Wanwan held the book and tilted her head to look up at him. He stood half a head taller than her. The bookstore lights glinted off the lenses of his black, framed glasses, hiding his eyes. Shin Mabai. Why do you keep helping me so often? The young man raised an eyebrow, looking confused, as if she had asked a question with an obvious answer. The confusion lasted 2 seconds before he replied. I wanted to, so I did. There isn't much of a reason. They are trivial tasks, and I don't mind. Su Wanwan froze for a moment, then lowered her head and placed the book in her shopping basket with a quiet laugh. All right, you're quite the volunteer. I'll give you a virtual flower as a reward. Her tone carried a hint of mischief. This blockhead approached every question like a math problem. Question: why do you help me? His solution: no particular reason. I wanted to. No line about her being special to him. No mention of enjoying spending time with her. Not even a simple, we are friends. Just a straightforward I wanted to, so I did. It was blunt enough to make her want to groan. He never knew how to speak sweetly, yet he always answered every question she asked. His replies often left her frustrated, but he never ignored her. That was fine. If she stayed by his side, she would not need to worry about him growing close to other people. He seemed like someone who valued sincere emotional connection. He would not easily be swayed by others. Su Wanwan paid for the reference book, held it against her chest, and followed Shin Ma-bai out of the bookstore. Shoppers wandered along the mall corridor. An old pop song played over the speakers, and the air smelled of popcorn. Shin Ma-bai walked ahead, moving at a steady pace with his laptop bag slung over one shoulder. His light blue plaid shirt did not stand out amid the crowd. The girl trailed behind, watching his back. Shin Ma-bai held himself straight, each stride consistent and measured. Just like his code, precise, regular, free of wasted movement. In her mind, she filed his line I wanted to, so I did into a mental folder she had labeled Shin Ma-bai's unique remarks. Several other quotes were already stored there, and now there was one more. She wondered when he would pause to reflect on all the curious things he had said. But she believed that day would come eventually. Much to Su Wanwan's surprise, Chin Fei appeared in her life far earlier in this lifetime. Unlike her previous life, when he only began pursuing her during their sophomore year, the boy abruptly crossed her path one Monday afternoon. The dismissal bell had just rung. Su Wanwan stuffed her textbooks into her canvas bag and followed the stream of students out of the classroom. She stared down at her phone, checking if Shin Ma-bai had replied to her message. Earlier during class, she had sneakily sent him a funny video of a cat knocking over a cup of water. As she reached the classroom doorway, whispers drifted over from the hallway. Wow, who's that? Look at that huge bouquet of roses. Who's he here for? He's so handsome. Curious, Su Wanwan lifted her head, wanting to see just how attractive the person everyone was talking about was. She then saw Chen Fei leaning against the door frame. He wore a black leather jacket, his hair styled neatly with hair gel, revealing sharply defined features. In his arms rested a massive bouquet of pink roses wrapped in light gray paper and tied with silver ribbon. It was clearly expensive. The young man slouched lazily against the frame, wearing that familiar, practiced smile she knew all too well. Su Wanwan rolled her eyes inwardly. Here we go again. Why had he started so early, back in their freshman year? Had their unexpected encounter at the KTV accelerated things? Was it the butterfly effect triggered by her rebirth? Still, this proved that fate could be altered by human choice. This time, her ending would definitely be different from her last life. She lowered her head, pretending not to notice him, and kept walking toward the other end of the hallway, planning to slip straight past him. Before she could move on, Chin Fei stretched out an arm to block her path. You're Su Wanwan, right? I asked around everywhere just to find out your name. His voice carried clearly, echoing down the corridor. Students around them halted in their tracks. Some recognized her, some recognized him, and several excitedly pulled out their phones. Forced to stop, Su Wanwan looked up at him. The next second, Chin Fei pushed the large bouquet of roses into her arms. The flowers were heavy, and she instinctively caught them. The scent of roses washed over her, pink petals brushing against her chin. Su Wanwan, I like you. Will you be my girlfriend? I'll treat you incredibly well. The tone he used was nothing like the casual confession he'd tossed out in the KTV hallway before. Where that earlier line had been said lightly as part of a game, this one was direct and earnest. Paired with his striking looks and obvious wealth, several girls nearby gasped in admiration. The surrounding crowd immediately erupted. Who is he? He looks really rich. That bouquet must cost a fortune. Most importantly, he's gorgeous. Yeah, he and Su Wanwan look perfect together, a match made in heaven, like a princess and her prince. Exactly. Way better than that plain guy she eats in the cafeteria with. I always thought that bookish fellow was just some distant relative. There's no way she'd fall for someone like him. Anyone would pick the guy standing right here. It's an obvious choice. I think he's from that elite school nearby. Chin Fei? I've heard of him. But word says he cycles through girlfriends constantly. A notorious playboy. Huh? A playboy? That's not ideal. Su Wanwan has high standards. But he's wealthy. Even if it doesn't last, it could still be fun. Bits and pieces of these remarks drifted to Su Wanwan's ears. She frowned, then firmly pushed the bouquet back into Chin Fei's embrace, her expression filled with distaste. Did you lose another round of truth or dare? Why do you always target me? You even came all the way to my university this time. Don't you have anything better to do? Chin Fei smiled, his tone and gaze equally sincere. It's not a game this time. I genuinely like you. I mean every word. Su Wanwan simply rolled her eyes and called his bluff without hesitation. How sincere. The kind of sincerity that only lasts a single month. Chin Fei froze, clearly shocked she knew about his romantic history. He recovered quickly, breaking into a brighter grin, his eyes lighting up with amusement. So you've heard about me. Haha, we really are destined to cross paths. It's true none of my past relationships lasted longer than a month, but that's only because I hadn't met the right person yet. This time is different. I'm willing to commit properly with you, Su Wanwan. I promise things will go beyond 30 days. I want to make an exception for you. The cheers around them grew louder. Some people whistled, others clapped, and many chanted for her to accept. Su Wanwan remained unmoved. Leave me alone. I'm not interested. If I ever date someone, I want it to last a lifetime, all the way to marriage. Chin Fei reached out and grabbed her sleeve to stop her from leaving. The moment his fingers touched her cuff, Su Wanwan pulled away sharply as if burned, stepping back. Her tone turned sharp enough to hush everyone in the hallway. Chin Fei, stay away. I have no interest in playing these silly, dramatic dating games with you. My family may not have much money, but I will never enter a relationship just for wealth with someone like you. I have always looked down on playboys who think money lets them do whatever they want. So do yourself a favor and stop pestering me. With that, she turned and walked away without a backward glance. Her canvas sneakers tapped quickly and firmly against the hallway floor, her high ponytail swinging vigorously behind her back. Onlookers automatically stepped aside to clear a path, all eyes following her figure until she vanished down the staircase. Chin Fei stood rooted to the spot, the returned roses still held in his arms, his gaze fixed on the empty stairwell. A friend who had quietly stood behind him finally stepped forward cautiously. Chin, should we go after her? Chin Fei said nothing. He stared at the empty space, his fingers tapping lightly against the bouquet's wrapping paper. The smile that had lingered on his lips slowly faded, replaced by a thoughtful expression. No need. He handed the roses to the person beside him and stuffed both hands into the pockets of his leather jacket. This girl is fascinating. She isn't playing hard to get. She truly has no interest in me. He smiled again, yet there was no frivolity or practice charm in it. It was the grin of a hunter who had stumbled upon a rare quarry, genuinely intrigued. I really do like her. The following Tuesday evening at 5:30, Su Wanwan and Shin Mabai sat across from each other, at their usual window seat in the campus cafeteria. She had ordered braised chicken chunks and stir-fried spinach. Shin Mabai's tray held beef stew with potatoes and a cup of free plain water, as always. As usual, she transferred 2 pieces of chicken from her plate to his. He frowned instinctively but did not refuse. Su Wanwan chatted away as she ate, sharing funny videos she had found online. A blogger tried to teach his parrot to say "I love you" so he could confess to the girl he likes. After a whole month of practice, the only phrase the bird mastered was, "Your delivery has arrived." Isn't that hilarious? She laughed halfway through her story, her eyes crinkling, a piece of chicken suspended between her chopsticks. The parrot has gorgeous emerald feathers and a bright red beak. It just isn't very smart. Shin Mabai ate quietly, occasionally humming a response, his expression unchanged. Su Wanwan did not mind and kept talking about how the parrot knocked over its owner's potted plants, mimicked the neighbor's dog, and got punished by being made to stand in the corner. Just as she described the parrot getting caught stealing sunflower seeds, Shin Mabai suddenly spoke. Su Wanwan, were you confessed to yesterday? Her chopsticks froze mid-air. She looked up at him in surprise. The young man's expression stayed as calm as ever. He held a chunk of potato on his chopsticks, as if he had just asked whether the cafeteria food was too salty. He did not meet her eyes as he spoke, staring down at his tray and prodding the potato gently. My roommate asked me last night. He said the pretty girl who often eats with me in the cafeteria was publicly given flowers and confessed to by a handsome, wealthy-looking guy. Shin Mobai's question was straightforward. No hesitation, no beating around the bush. No softening phrases like, I'm just curious. It was a plain statement followed by a direct question, as though he were reporting an observed piece of data. Su Wanwan did not reply immediately. She studied him for a long moment. Why was he asking this? Her heart skipped a beat, yet she kept her features calm. Setting down her chopsticks, she rested her chin in her hand and smiled faintly at him. Shin Mabai, I never took you for someone who gossips. Could it be that you're interested in this sort of thing? Shin Mabai lifted his head and met her gaze directly. Behind his black-rimmed glasses, his eyes were steady. His tone remained flat. I'm not. But if you have a boyfriend, I can't keep eating meals with you regularly. It would be inappropriate and interfere with your relationship. Your boyfriend would surely feel uncomfortable. Su Wanwan felt utterly deflated. For a split second, she had hoped this dull boy was finally jealous. Of course she had imagined it. How could a block of wood feel jealousy? What had she been thinking, harboring such unrealistic hopes for him? His train of thought was painfully obvious. Has boyfriend spends time with boyfriend cannot eat with me must confirm this variable. She composed herself silently, rolling her eyes subtly, only shifting her gaze upward and pushing out her lower lip slightly. I was confessed yesterday, yes, but I turned him down clearly. He's a playboy whose relationships never last longer than a month. I have no respect for people who treat relationships so lightly. Shin Mabai uttered a quiet, oh. He then lowered his head and continued eating. He picked up a piece of potato, chewed it, and his expression remained neutral, as if the conversation had ended completely. Su Wanwan resumed eating, poking her rice vigorously with her chopsticks, feeling annoyed. She silently grumbled at him. That was it? After asking the question, he had nothing more to say? Could he not ask what kind of person she liked? Just one simple, oh? Fool. Shin Mabai was a complete fool, the most oblivious, exasperating person alive. What she failed to notice was that Shin Mabai's grip on his chopsticks loosened imperceptibly after he looked down. She missed the faint, fleeting twitch at the corner of his mouth after saying oh. It was barely a smile, more like quiet relief upon confirming a worrying variable would not disrupt his plans. Su Wanwan was too busy silently complaining about him to catch any of it. What Su Wanwan did not know was that the matter was far from over. Unlike her previous life, where Chin Fei accepted rejection and vanished without a word, he refused to give up this time. In the days that followed, he stopped waiting for her directly outside her classroom. Instead, he lingered at the entrance of the girls' dormitory every afternoon, enduring countless curious stares. Sometimes he carried milk tea, sometimes a box of imported chocolates, and other times he stood there empty-handed. Su Wanwan turned him away harshly each time. Can you leave me alone? I've already said no. Are you unable to understand simple speech? She rejected him plainly without mercy. Oddly enough, Chin Fei grew more persistent with every refusal. He never grew upset. He would cheerfully take back his gifts and say, I'll come back tomorrow. Once he even suggested, why not be friends first? Give me a chance. How can you decide we aren't compatible without getting to know me? Su Wanwan gradually grew weary of him. He was like sticky gum stuck to the sole of her shoe, impossible to shake off. The campus forum was flooded with posts discussing them. Foreign languages department beauty pursued by wealthy elite school student. What kind of person does Su Wanwan like? Will Chin win over the cold beauty? Threads grew longer by the hour with all sorts of speculation. Some students even started placing bets on when the pair would begin dating. If this continued, it would derail her efforts to get close to Shin Mabai. What if that dull boy believed the forum rumors? What if he decided to keep his distance out of consideration? All her efforts would be wasted. Shin Mabai still attended tutoring sessions and ate dinner with her as usual, and had not brought up the confession incident again, but she could not afford to take risks. Chin Fei was a ticking time bomb. One Thursday afternoon, when Chin Fei waited for her once more outside the dormitory, Su Wanwan sighed and walked toward him. Fine, I give up. We can add each other on WeChat and get to know one another as friends. Chin Fei's eyes lit up instantly. But I have conditions. Su Wanwan held up one finger, her expression serious. You are not allowed to come to my university unannounced anymore. No more sending me gifts. Don't go around telling people you're pursuing me. We will be nothing more than ordinary WeChat contacts who occasionally exchange a message if a topic catches our interest. Can you agree to that? Chin Fei smiled and pulled out his phone, opening his WeChat QR code without hesitation. Sure. I'll follow all your rules. Su Wanwan rolled her eyes heavily, scanned his code, and right in front of him changed his nickname to Annoying Guy with a chewing gum emoji. She then turned and left without another word. Chin Fei watched her retreating figure and put his phone away, unable to suppress his grin. So cute. He muttered to himself, then turned and headed back toward his own school, satisfied. Chin Fei's disruption was temporarily put to rest. After adding each other on WeChat, he kept his word and stopped visiting her campus. He only sent occasional messages, sometimes asking what she had eaten that day, sometimes sharing jokes he found amusing. Su Wanwan usually replied with a short or oh, and often left his messages on read without replying. She stuck firmly to her promise, treating him as nothing more than a casual contact, not even a proper friend. That Thursday evening, Su Wanwan changed clothes in her dormitory, ready to head to the cafeteria to meet Shin Ma-bai for dinner, when a wave of dizziness washed over her. She touched her forehead. It felt warm, but she did not pay it much mind. The temperature had been fluctuating lately, and several of her dorm mates had come down with mild colds. She assumed she had caught it from them. She pulled out her phone and messaged Shin Ma-bai. I won't be at the cafeteria tonight. Eat by yourself. We can meet at the library later. After setting her phone down, she made a cup of instant noodles and ate a few bites. She retrieved a strip of cold medicine from her drawer and swallowed 2 tablets with warm water. She put on a face mask, slung her canvas bag over her shoulder, and left the dorm. When she reached the 5th floor of the library, Shin Ma-bai was already sitting at their regular spot, his laptop open with lines of code displayed on the screen. Su Wanwan sat down beside him and set her bag on the table, pulling out her advanced mathematics textbook and scratch paper. The mask made breathing feel stuffy, but she thought nothing of it. Shin Ma-bai glanced up, his gaze lingering on her mask. What's wrong? Why are you wearing a mask? Isn't it uncomfortable? Have you had dinner? It's nothing. Su Wanwan flipped to the page they had left off on. Her voice sounded muffled through the fabric, lower than normal. She sniffled, congestion making her speech even heavier. Just a slight cold. I don't want to pass it on to you over dinner. I already ate. Let's start going over the problems. I'm still focused enough. Shin Ma-bai did not begin the tutoring session. He looked at her again, holding her gaze a little longer this time. Without warning, he lifted his hand and pressed the back of his palm against her forehead. Su Wanwan froze. His fingers were slightly cool, his knuckles resting above her brows while his palm hovered lightly away from her skin. A faint, clean scent of laundry detergent drifted from his shirt cuffs. The contact lasted only 2 or 3 seconds before he pulled his hand back. His tone shifted from neutral observation to unwavering certainty. Su Wanwan, this is not just a mild cold. You have a fever, quite a high one. We need to go to the hospital immediately. It's fine. I took medicine back in the dorm before coming. Su Wanwan waved the thought away and turned another page of her textbook. Truly, it's just a small cold. A good night's sleep will fix it. Let's start studying. I still feel clear, headed enough. Let's go. Shin Ma-bai stood up. He closed his laptop and slipped it into his bag, zipping it up neatly, then looked down at her. Behind his glasses, there was no room for argument. His brows creased faintly, and his lips pressed into a thin line. You can't judge how serious it is on your own. You aren't exactly sharp to begin with. We can't risk the fever making you even slower. Su Wanwan was speechless. She opened her mouth to retort at his blunt remark but held her tongue. Despite his irritating words, he had packed his belongings in an instant, backpack slung over his shoulders, ready to leave, waiting only for her. Besides, she genuinely felt unwell. The cold medicine had barely taken effect. Dizziness swirled in her head, and chills ran over her body, though she had tried to ignore it. In her previous life, she had endured a severe high fever alone in a rented apartment for 2 days with no one to care for her, yet recovered eventually. This time, however, someone was determined to take her to hospital, teasing that she might become slower from the fever. The feeling was wonderful. In the end, Su Wanwan gathered her things and followed Shin Ma-bai out obediently. They soon arrived at the hospital emergency department. Registration, waiting, temperature checks, blood tests, and scans followed one after another. After all the procedures, Su Wanwan slouched on a plastic waiting area chair, her head resting against the wall. Her eyes half closed above her mask. Shin Ma-bai hurried back and forth between the payment counter and pharmacy, clutching a stack of medical forms, walking faster than usual. She watched him through half-lidded eyes. His dark gray plaid shirt looked deeper in color under the hospital's harsh white lights. To Su Wanwan's feverish eyes, The plainly dressed boy weaving through the crowd stood out more than anyone else. After reviewing her blood work and scan results, the doctor said there was mild lung inflammation and she needed an intravenous drip. The infusion room was large, lined with rows of blue plastic chairs beneath bright fluorescent lights. The air smelled of disinfectant. Su Wanwan sat in a corner seat with a needle inserted into the back of her left hand. Clear liquid dripped slowly from the fore bag. She leaned back in her chair, her eyelids growing heavier by the minute. Shin Ma-bai sat quietly beside her. His laptop rested on his lap, the screen lit, yet he did not type. He simply stayed seated, occasionally glancing at the fluid level or turning to check on Su Wanwan. Before long, the girl's head tilted sideways and came to rest on his shoulder. Shin Ma-bai's body stiffened instinctively. He glanced down. Su Wanwan's eyes were shut, her breathing steady. She still wore her mask, but her eyelashes trembled gently. Her forehead pressed against the fabric of his shirt, her elevated temperature seeping through the thin cotton like a stone warmed by sunlight. He hesitated for several seconds, but ultimately did not push her away or shift position. "Silly girl," the young man whispered softly, remaining perfectly still to let her lean against him.